here we go. It's about time. A local pinhead to the Portland metropolitan area is about to do a live review and breakdown of the IBR Project Plans, the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program plans. It's gonna be great. I had the last of some hand-me-down sparkling cider too, so yeah, you know it's a proper inner suburban Northwest roots right there. If you have a hand-me-down like bottle of some random bullshit. Anyway, that said, what we're gonna do really quickly is, of course, make sure that we share this via Twitter. So, I did change my channel's icon, just so people know, because I'm sure some people might be like, who's this guy? It's the person who you subscribe to if you are a masochist, of course. Anyway, gonna do this really quickly. Oh yeah, by the way, this is a perfect opportunity for me to say, the Communities tab, or Community tab. I want to make sure you guys go and check out the Communities tab every so often, if you're subscribed, that is, of course. Because if you do that, you're going to be able to get updates. Years ago, before they took away the Discussions tab, years ago, that was my only way to be able to give you guys updates literally on the channel. So, the fact that now they've added it back is super great and important. And I'm very proud and happy that they've done it. That said, YouTube is saying it's fine, but I have my phone up just so that, again, as usual, we can make sure that it is working okay, because right now I'm looking at it, and at least on here, it's having a frickin' seizure. So hopefully on your end, everything's going okay. Cause, yeah, it's having a frickin' heart attack on my phone right now, and it's like locking up, and it's refusing to function. Now it's working again, but only if it's not live. I don't understand what's going on with that. That's obviously my phone end. Anyway, let me quickly refresh my page so I can get out of this and we can get to the focal point, which is the IBR. Because I wanted to make sure that I ensure that I do this. Just in case there's like 3 people in existence that see that and decide, sure, I'll do that. Expert analysis. Oh, it's funny. Sure, Al, why not? Okay, anyway, enough of that. So, we're gonna do this video first. It's funny because I already did a live stream like a month ago, where I did the live breakdown the day of release that TriMet released their, Forward Together bus plan map. And as a lifelong Reliant rider on my own 2 feet and disaster, I did a live reaction breakdown to that map. And it was in there, I had already seen stuff for the IBR, and I knew that they were trying so desperately hard to force the frickin' light rail over and onto the new bridge. Now, there's an inherent issue and problem with trying to put the light rail across the bridge, and that is the yellow line maxed. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to bring the yellow line, aka the Expo line, from the Expo Center across the damn river into downtown Vancouver. Now you might think, oh, that's great, that's cool and all. Once you learn and you figure out that the data shows that every single successive year, including this year, the ridership has been declining since I believe it was 2018 or 17. I think it was 2017 was the peak ridership in a year, and thus week to week, day to day, month to month, that the Yellow Line Max had. It peaked at like, I think it was something like 18,000, just over 18,000 users, which is abhorrently terrible, and it's well below the projected amount that they guaranteed to the government for the funds in order to build it. well below their projections of what they guaranteed that they would be able to meet if they had the funds to then be able to go forward and make the yellow line max. Well below it. By then it was supposed to be, I believe, at 25,000 or 28,000 riders. And it's not there at all. It's actually been declining since, and last I saw for this year so far, it has gone down again to where it's probably going to end the year around 15,000 or just under 15 to all the way down to potentially 14,000, which is a terrible ridership for something so expensive to maintain, to run, to fix, update. The electricity it requires, everything about it, the build and how much it costs the taxpayers, so on. It shouldn't even exist at this point. To where, quite literally, for context, Vancouverites, so people from Clark County who ride C-Tran, just ride the C-Tran buses into Portland. And then they ride TriMet buses, they transfer, or if they're just trying to get downtown, they get off the C-Tran bus downtown off of the Vine. Because it's a lot quicker, it's a lot cleaner, it's a lot safer, and it just makes more sense. It's infinitely more efficient, comfortable, everything. Go figure, buses are always superior to light rail. Despite what people like Alan Fisher and Reese, RM Transit, and others keep trying to say otherwise about, including TriMet themselves. Now, the reason why I say this to preface this and start for context and why it's so important is because this video, when we watch it, I'm going to let you hear it, and you're going to be able to immediately click together and figure out how many more issues there is with them trying to still demand we have to have the light rail go across the bridge into Vancouver. Let's take a listen together.
The Interstate Bridge, spanning across the Columbia River, provides a critical connection between Oregon and Washington. It supports local jobs and families and is a vital trade route for regional, national, and international economies. In partnership with program partners and the community, the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program has identified a modified locally preferred alternative, known as the LPA. This modified LPA identifies the foundational elements that local partners agree to move forward for further evaluation. Joined by equity and community advisory members, program staff led a tour of the program area. The first stop on our tour is on the north side of the bridge, where we learned about some of the changes that have developed in the area since the previous replacement effort.
One of the key things that's very easy to look at from this location is the waterfront development with the port, downtown development with like the building that we can see right here that's called the Hurley building. New developments like this are things that we have to be actively engaging with the city for other developments as well as developers to understand.
The current bridge is located in close proximity to two airports, the Fort Vancouver National Historic Site, the BNSF Freight Corridor, and river traffic, all factors that will be considered in the determination of the bridge's width, height, and placement. Next stop on our tour, Evergreen Boulevard in Vancouver, the proposed terminus for light rail.
This is an important stop. There's already C-Tran facilities that come here. The library, the Vancouver Library, is right behind us. Right now, we're going to work this and make sure that this is equitable and it fits into the plans of the City of Vancouver and C-Tran. So, once again, the last time we had downtown running light rail, which would have interrupted a lot of the downtown businesses. The city says, hey, we have a plan. That will not work for us. So this, we think, running along I-5 is going to be the best solution and work in concert with what the city will be working for the development of their downtown.
The Evergreen terminus via I-5 offers the best opportunity for merging the two metro area transit systems together, and the I-5 alignment provides faster, safer, more reliable service and minimizes disruptions to downtown Vancouver. At this stop, we also learned about ramp-to-ramp connections, also known as auxiliary lanes. Auxiliary lanes, like the one shown here, are short connections that reduce bottlenecks and optimize traffic flow by allowing drivers to merge safely, providing more efficient movement through the corridor and reducing emissions from idling vehicles. Next, we cross the 105-year-old Interstate Bridge, with its 3 narrow lanes, lack of shoulders, and unsafe active transportation walkways, into Oregon, where we stop at Hayden Island and Marine Drive.
This is where the transit alignment will be coming to, the yellow station, the extension, and we'll have a transit station somewhere in the vicinity.
There are local streets on Hayden Island that we
I
are...
didn't catch that last time. She said, we'll have a station, local transit station, somewhere in the distance. Somewhere in the... She just ushers it over there. Just brush it away. Somewhere in the distance. Over there. Where we're not going to pan to. Just over there generally somewhere. That you have no context to understand. Meanwhile, we're in the middle of a massive fucking asphalt parking lot that, like, clearly nobody's really using. It's probably a truck stop.
very excited about. And one of them is going to be behind you. So the highway will be higher, and there'll be a local street that right about where the Jansen Beach sign is that will go underneath and connect to a local street on the other side.
A partial interchange on Hayden Island recognizes the desire to balance vehicle and freight access, with a preference expressed by the community to minimize the footprint over Hayden Island, and a full interchange at Marine Drive would help facilitate movement for freight. The modified LPA addresses safety and congestion by improving active transportation, adding shoulders, increasing lane widths, and improving ramp merges. The entire program area would greatly benefit from these improvements.
Yeah, so of course they have their main promo to start, which is like the entire first minute, and then they have the ending there. The light rail part is such like a key important thing, because you should be able to make the connection here of why this makes no sense. Notice, he's using special terms. You can tell he's trying to actively think to make sure he uses the correct terms to not point out and suggest the reality that CTRAN, and this is a fact, by the way, you can easily verify even via CTRAN's own Twitter if you go back a ways. CTRAN rejected and made sure that legally, no matter what plan goes through, if one ever does, for the Interstate Bridges Replacement plans that has light rail in it, they will have absolutely nothing to do with the light rail. As in, quite literally, they will not fund, they will not pay for. There will be no taxes for anybody in Vancouver or even Washington State that will go towards the implementation of the light rail into the city of Vancouver, into Clark County, Washington, across the bridge itself. They will have no deal in any way, shape, or form. There will not be a single penny from them funding that light rail portion of the bridge project. And then even when it's completed, they will not have a single penny legally. They will not have a single penny that will be going towards literally any aspect of the operations and existence of said light rail line servicing their city and county in Washington State. Like, literally, there's not a penny from coming from Washington towards it. The reason why is because CTRAN, the city of Vancouver, Clark County, and then the residents of Vancouver and Clark County, and all the CTRAN district and riders, want nothing to do with Max. They want nothing to do with the mess that is TriMet. They want nothing to do with the horrors of fucking light rail. Nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing. They've washed their hands of it even legally, where quite literally in one of those meetings, they straight up said, we will not pay for the plans for the light rail. We will not pay anything, including in taxation, towards the implementation of light rail into the plans or the actual construction of the bridge itself. We will not pay for the maintenance of the light rail. We will not pay for the trains. We will not pay for the electricity. We will not pay for the stations. We will not pay for keeping things clean on it. We will not pay for its operation. We will not pay for anything because we do not want it. Which means that they're actually listening to their ridership. They're listening to their voters, unlike TriMet and unlike Oregon, unlike Multnomah County, unlike the city of Portland, unlike the state of Oregon itself, which is not listening to anybody. They just don't give a fuck, especially when it comes down to light rail, because they want their kickback paychecks to stuff in their back pockets. That's all they care about. And they know that they can force us to pay 98% of the bill, which on average we pay in taxes every time there's a new light rail line or an extension to one. We are forced to pay it, even if we have collectively rejected it in votes, they still make us pay for it in full. They force it down our throats against our will. They're clearly trying to do it with this in the IBR now as well, and that is a huge problem and massively problematic. So that's why I mainly wanted to show this video, because they're using the classic scripted terms except live, so he has to think on it to make sure he doesn't use the wrong terms, aka actually correct in honest terms about the fact that they have rejected it. They don't want anything to do with the light rail, and that we in Oregon are going to be forced to pay every freaking penny of it. It makes no sense to do it. If they're not taking it now, when they have a line that will literally directly service the Lombard Transit Center, where they have direct access to, I believe it is the 6. It's either the 6 or the 4. No, it's not the 4. It is the 6. To the 6th line of TriMet, the bus line. And also thus to Yellow Line Max, which they're trying to extend into Vancouver. They are trying to make us pay for something that Vancouverites just aren't going to use. Even when it's there, they're not going to use it. And in fact, with this language specifically, it also seems to indicate there's only going to be one single station in Vancouver and in Washington. So it's an extension just to go over the bridge, just to service downtown Vancouver with one station. So it's not even like they could use it as an express hop service like the only real ridership of the Orange Line Max does, where they use it for a hop, a quick express trip through downtown, and that's it. Or just the barely the other side of the Telecom Crossing, the inner southeast. That's it. Nobody else rides it to Milwaukee like at all. There's like an average of, I think, 2 to 4 people that use it the rest of the freaking line, either direction, other than for work supposedly during rush hour. But even then, some still take the buses instead, because it's just better to do that. Max is where you find all of the supposed mentally ill who clearly are off their meds and or on drugs, and the ones who are doing drugs, those are shooting drugs, those are shitting themselves literally, or vomiting, or arguing with somebody who's not there, or whatever else, or is literally having a psychotic break, but they're actually potentially taking it out on other people because they looked at them or something. Like, that's Max. They're always dirty. If you're unsafe on any part of TriMet, it's gonna be on Max, especially through the main downtown corridors. One of the reasons why, there's countless reasons why Yellow Line Max is continually declining ridership, and it never really got anywhere. But modern day, currently, one of the main reasons is because of the fact that it's super unsafe. It's easily the least safe Max line. And that includes, the Blue Line, which has the highest amount of ridership. It goes right through the heart of downtown, and also into frickin' Gresham. And yet, it's much safer than taking the Yellow Line. The Yellow Line is complete trash. And, nobody freaking likes it. It's also painfully inefficient. It's extremely, extremely slow. It's literally one of the things that they guaranteed to the engineers and everything, guaranteed to the feds, the FTA and everything, when they were going for their funds to build the Yellow Line, the Expo Line Max. One of the things they guaranteed via their transit and logistics and planning and mathematics and engineers, right? They guaranteed to them that what would happen is the average speed of the Max line would be, on average, I believe it was 2.7 miles an hour faster than the cars on the street that it's running through and on. Through that corridor. That originally, by the way, had the bus, and they figured it would also be 2.1 miles an hour faster, and thus shave, I think it's 20 to 30 minutes off of the time that it would take on the bus or via vehicle to get there to the North Terminus, so say to the Expo Center, or even to up Interstate Avenue the rest of the way to Lombard TC or whatever. That's one of their justifications for, like, give us the funds, feds, so we can build the expo line. They fell short on that too. The average speed of the max line is slower than the personal vehicle traffic, the car traffic. It's slower than that. It's also slower than the bus. The bus and the cars currently average about 14.7 miles an hour on that portion of Interstate Avenue. The max average is 12.7, and it's been declining slowly over time. The max somehow is the one that's getting slower, not the traffic, whether that's due to congestion or not, which we think it would be the traffic because of congestion, but no, it's the max. It's getting slower and slower and slower. So it's a lot less efficient to take Yellow Line Max, you know, literally at all. It's also, again, an extreme risk. So extending this into frickin' Vancouver, again, makes absolutely zero logical sense. It would literally make infinitely more sense and still be infinitely cheaper, including in the long run, to have just said fuck it and supported the Frog Ferry service between downtown Portland and Vancouver. It legitimately would have been infinitely more efficient, cost efficient, time efficient, just logistically more sound. And even that had a lot of problems, which is why even general transit supporters who still love the idea were like, it's not a viable alternative. Now, that's a different topic, but I actually don't 100% agree with him. I think it was a very viable option because you should have as many modes of transit and as many options for people to take as possible. Especially considering now, if it's transit, it's going to be infinitely cheaper probably, and actually accessible to the average person, including transit riders, to be able to get to and from Vancouver. Sure, it's going to take you quite a bit of time, but then again, so is it going to take you probably even longer, especially during a rush hour, complete parking lot jams, to cross the fucking bridge in a car or on a bus. It's going to take infinitely longer time. So why not just have at least that one line for the ferry as an experiment and see, okay, how much quicker, if any quicker, is it? Or is it actually slower? Or is it comparable to getting stuck in traffic over the bridge? And thus, you know, like, it gives people more of an option. It's also ensures people like me could actually, you know, visit Vancouver and thus, you know, potentially, oh, I don't know, contribute to their economy. Not just ours across the river. If, you know, you had a transit service like that across the river without getting stuck in traffic, like that other alternative, I would strongly prefer that. You also, now I'm getting sidetracked on the Frog Ferry idea, or just a general ferry idea. But like, the point being, so to stop myself from getting further sidetracked and talking just about the ferry concept, the point is it would be infinitely more cost efficient to have that instead of this stupid max extension across the river. It just doesn't make any logical sense. So ultimately, there is no justification whatsoever for this light rail line across into Clark County, Washington, and to service Vancouver. Absolutely zero. It just doesn't work. So one other thing I wanted to point out with this video, though. Wait for it. Comments are turned off. Turns out, every single video on this channel, so they have it on their channel settings by default to have no ability to comment on the videos. The only reason why groups like this do that is because they know they're going to get a fuck ton of debates and arguments between people. Not only that, but even more so, they're going to get a lot of negative comments that are going to say, why the fuck would you do this? Why would you make us pay for this? This is a shit plan. This is a shit, you know, public input on a public fucking project that we are going to be paying out of our tax money in pockets. They don't actually want public opinion. They do not value public opinion with the IBR because it's a political thing. Politics does not give a fuck about you. It doesn't matter the party, it doesn't matter the affiliation, it doesn't matter the project, it doesn't matter what it is about politically. If it's politics, they're not going to give a fuck about what you have to say. All they want is your fucking tax money, and they're not actually going to listen to a thing you say. And especially when it involves, oh, I don't know, super corrupt governments like the city of Portland, Multnomah County, and then, oh, TriMet, which is a multi-governmental corporation that claims it's totally autonomous and totally not a corporation. I mean, if you are super invested into transit and planning and logistics, and or you just simply are reliant on TriMet for a long time in your life or your entire life, like myself, you're gonna figure this shit out. You're gonna learn all about how the inner workings of all this shit works, and how fucked up it is, and how they don't give a fuck about anything you have to say. Even if you are a reliant writer, in this case, when it comes down to TriMet. TriMet is absolutely involved in this. You know that they are lobbying aggressively and very hard to push this max line across the river and make us pay for it. They clearly do not give a fuck if anybody uses it. They don't give a fuck if Clark County is not going to pay anything into it. Because, hey, they can still get our tax money, force us to have to pay for it, even if we don't want it. And they, too, just automatically burn any and every bit of public opinion, say, everything. Like, they act like, oh, yes, we're listening, we care, yes. And then they immediately go and burn it, because you never see any of the things that we as writers, reliant, that are very vocal, ask for, request, demand, or even just straight up shred them for. They don't care, because they're government. They're never gonna give a fuck. That's how politics works. It's unfortunate. But this is like as in-your-face straightforward as like, yeah, we actually don't want public comment, and we don't give a fuck about what we say, because obviously this plan's bad, because we know. This is why we don't want your comments, because, well, the world would see it, you guys get in debate and or arguments with each other, but also the collective is very negative towards our desires and plans for this whole thing. So naturally, fuck you, basically. I kept this Google Images tab open because of the fact that it gives you graphics, and I know inevitably I can just click on these, and I don't have to worry about trying to navigate, say, the IBR's website to be able to actually show you these things. So, as you saw in that video, the yellow is, of course, the light rail line. It says high capacity transit option. See, now my question is, what do they mean by option? Are they referring to, oh, I don't know, BRT at high capacity as an option? Because that'd be great. But if they're saying that this is also a rail option, so a light rail option, and it's alternative to this, but it's still light rail, so that's still going to be a major problem. If this is BRT, and so it's a dedicated busway, now that makes perfect sense. I am in 100% support of that. I have zero support for the light rail option, as for every reason I've just expressed to you and pointed out to you. These are literal factual reasons, by the way, that I've stated. They're not just personal opinions or my personal bias against light rail and Max and TriMet. It's literally using factual information and statistics and everything to prove to you why this light rail thing makes no sense, and you should not support it either if you actually want proper transit and suppose equity across the river. The best option, and always by far the most efficient option, is to say fuck light rail. How about some high capacity, super high frequency BRT? That would make sense. Now, in this sense, admittedly, one thing you'd have to do in order for it to be truly express in this BRT, bus rapid transit, is you'd have to have dedicated lanes and aggressive enforcement of laws against violators of the bus lanes. One thing that people do not understand about real BRT, and I'm sure this aspect is never mentioned even on the official group or whatever you want to call it, whether the global one or the national one, that is always talking, I can't remember what the heck its acronym is or what it's called. Ray Delonte, aka Cities Nerd, or City Nerd here on YouTube and or Twitter, he'd be a great person to ask, because I know he knows, because he's also was a former city planner. So, and that's like his main focus is city and road planning and transit planning and all that stuff on YouTube. Really respect him. I definitely recommend you go give him and his channel a look and even a subscribe if you're interested in this stuff and you want to learn a lot more about this. But he's shared that website before, and in a BRT video, and I wish I remembered what it was. I currently don't, but I wouldn't even listen to that group, because I would strongly disagree with a lot of their definitions of real, true, genuine, great bus rapid transit, because it's not wholly like itself separated from everything else. It does not include, like I said, I guarantee it will not say anywhere about that aggressive enforcement against violators of lanes, especially and specifically referencing the genuine systems that have bus lanes and, you know, what do you call it, expressways and all that, that may not have BRT, but they still want to enforce aggressively violators that go and use the busway or use the bus lanes or park in the bus lanes. Because what happens is they have a system that's custom built for transit systems, specifically buses that have bus lanes and are BRTs, that are there on the bus mounted, that always are working, because they're hardwired into the bus itself. They're always working, and they, anytime they see a violating vehicle, it automatically snaps a picture and then instantly sends it over with all the data it needs. So the exact time, the exact date, line, bus number, because every bus has its own unique number running each bus line on any transit system, at least here in the United States. I'm sure it's true elsewhere. And so as a result, it has that on there. It has probably the driver's information, I would assume. That part I don't know, but I'm assuming it does. So that you know exactly who was driving as well. So that way it's literally impossible for them not to know exactly when it happened, where it happened, everything like that. And so you have the instant sending of that data with the picture. As soon as it gets that photograph, it automatically sends it off to the police departments or the police department, so that way they can respond as soon as they can. So maybe they can't immediately send somebody out to find that, because maybe they don't have a unit close enough, and it's going to be dumb to just like try to see, like, well, maybe they're still around, maybe they're still there, like. So even if they can't do that, they have the picture of the vehicle and the license plate. And so as a result, they immediately, like any police department, can look up the license plate number and match it to the vehicle. And then they immediately know who it is, so who violated it, and where they live. And they might even know their job. And so then they can go pay them a visit at their place and apply the fine and or the charges. And the fine should be very steep. So that you make sure that even the most arrogant, richer pricks know that, like, hey, you can keep challenging it, but eventually you're going to get your license revoked and or suspended, and you're going to have your car impounded if you do this a fourth or fifth time. And the fine's going to be ridiculous. So you might not want to fuck with it and keep challenging it, because it's probably not going to be worth it. You know. So that's a real bus rapid transit system, and that's how you can enforce it and ensure that nobody violates it. One thing that people get wrong about BRT is the fact that that means that, oh, well, if it's bus only, then what is EMS supposed to do? Sit in traffic lanes? Like, what? It's like, no, obviously, the one exception to those vehicles that go into a true BRT lane and or way, right, is going to be EMS, police, paramedics, fire department. They're always going to be the sole exceptions to be able to use bus lanes and or busways on transit systems, obviously. They're not going to force against themselves or each other because, in fact, actually, that's a further benefit and boon of having bus-only lanes with that aggressive enforcement and busways. Because, again, guess what? It's completely clear except for the buses. And so, as a result, EMS has the quickest, fastest, most efficient response times they could possibly have, at least within the corridors that have these aggressive enforcements because they have the bus lanes. So BRT actually has some amazingly beneficial side effects that are huge boons to all of us who get to benefit from it. Even if you never want to use the transit system and you never like transit, great, you still benefit, technically. Especially if something bad happens to your place and or to you, somebody steals your car, whatever it is, they have a much quicker response time now and a far more efficient one because they're probably even going to prioritize the places that have this aggressive enforcement because they have the busways and or bus lines. So they're going to follow those if it gets them quicker to wherever they're trying to respond to. It's a strategic thing. It would work impeccably. So there's a lot of beautiful side effects of a genuine bus rapid transit system like that. So I hope that this alternative of the high capacity transit alternative option is that, and that they can implement it the rest of the way for the lines that would be using it. Because then, on the rest of the streets that those lines use, if they aggressively enforce it and they have aggressive, they have bus lanes, guess what? They have no delay, and they can be as frequent as they want. They can be at rush hour. They can run every 5 freaking minutes. Nothing but articulated. Be beautiful. There's no reason not to have that over a light rail line. So, like, quite honestly, this is a great idea. If that is what this is. But they're slinky and they're deceptive, especially when TriMet's involved. So I wouldn't be surprised if this option is in reality just another light rail thing. I wouldn't be surprised if that's just their other way of saying it's actually another light rail, but we're not going to tell you it is. So, and you get to see it from a different angle. Community connector. I'm assuming that's a pedestrian area? Path? But then again, it's very wide. So maybe it's pedestrian and... what do you call it? Well, I don't know. Anyway. There is a guy on Twitter who is clearly a geek. He has a lot of knowledge, and it comes down to, and he's very well researched, and he consistently is doing research and outputs his findings. When it comes down to actually the environmental impacts of a new interstate bridge or tunnel, he actually recommends instead of a bridge, it should be a tunnel because long-term effects as well as, what do you call it? Current term effects, I guess, and short term to the environment, to the migratory fish patterns, to the ecosystem of the waterway of the Columbia and everything, it would actually have infinitely less impact in every possible way and be far more positive if they actually dug a tunnel and made the I-5, instead of a bridge, be a tunnel underneath the river. I might just pop on Twitter just to see if I can find that guy again. Just to show you guys, because he's trying to share with the world why that would make a lot more sense. Which, I've thought about it. I'm like, yeah, that's not a bad idea. The one single thing I can think of off the bat that could be a negative and a potential concern is the entrances would probably still be in the floodplain. So if there was enough of a flood, it would end up inside of the freaking tunnel. And you can't exactly have, you know, stormwater drains in tunnels. I guess you could have them at the entrances, but they'd have to be really high capacity to stem floods. So I could see that potentially being an issue. But then again, there is a second issue I could think of with a tunnel, which is that it's the same reason why I'm against anything being any underground transit systems being implemented in Portland, in the Portland and Vancouver areas, especially the Portland area, because, you know, the entire area is a swamp, marshland, and floodplain. And we built on top of not only those filled in places, which is already, you know, super movable and malleable, but, you know, perfect for liquefaction, right? But on top of it, to make it even more liquefaction perfect, for it to be able to just like liquefy everything in a big earthquake, yeah, we built on top of volcanic ash and river silt. And that's like feet and feet thick. It's really deep down. And especially considering, again, it's marshland and floodplain. Yeah, it's going to be really deep down. We have so much marshland. Like, everything in the Portland metropolitan area, especially in the Oregon side, is like purely marshland in reality before we filled most of it in. And the rest of it usually would flood at least once every few years. In this time of year, in fact. It's ridiculous. So that's why I'm always against kind of like the subway idea, because I know that in an earthquake, that's a much more massive and bigger disaster. Plus, I know that in a bulk load of the Portland metropolitan area, most of our utilities are underground. This is why you don't usually see power lines all over the place like you do, say, in Texas or elsewhere. The plains, even all over certain places in the Northeast. It's because it's actually underground. We have them in their own like insulated pipes underground. We have the internet cables, fiber optics. We have the electricity in a lot of places around here. We have the sewer / wastewater. So the rainwater and the sewers are actually the same systems in a lot of our area. We have our normal water systems. We have the natural gas pipelines under there. We have pretty much everything underground. So in an earthquake, that's going to be all over the place, and that's going to really fuck up everything, including the water supplies and our ground, you know, cleanliness and safety. But it's also going to do royal fuck ups to anything like a transit system, you know, underground, like a subway. Which bears mentioning when I talk about the tunnel concept for the bridge. So instead of the bridge, it would be a tunnel. You know. I'm actually sincerely curious as to what Ray, City Nerd, would actually think about this whole interchange concept. It is kind of similar to what they have now. I'm genuinely curious, though, because, yeah. I don't know, man. I'm genuinely curious, because I don't think he likes this kind of interchanges, but I'm not 100% sure. I can't imagine they're very efficient. Could be wrong. This is definitely more of a proper city planner's map. So you can actually see the literal graphics that the city planners and the traffic engineers and everything, my traffic engineers, I mean, solely become Fran Drescher. The traffic engineers have created for themselves to use and look at. That's what this is. This is why it looks the way it does. Jansen Drive. What is going on here? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what those things mean. That's interesting. If you actually have any experience with traffic engineering and this kind of design, and how this stuff works, I would like to see what these kinds of things are indicative of. It says IH, but it might be this. I have no idea. Probably is. I'm not sure what these like weird blob things are. That's what I'm most curious about there, but yeah. That's really a big mess. Oh god. Anyway, let's get away from that horror show and let's go to the next thing. So, the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. I call it project, whatever. So IBR being Interstate Bridge Replacement. Who would have thought? It's like I put that in the parentheses in the title of this. So of course they got their self-promotion going on and all this. One of the things I wanted to point out though is their whole equity thing. What is with everything being all the equity thing? I understand it's the Portland metro area and it's the West Coast. So they gotta appease and they gotta play up their whole SJW culture, because if they don't, they'd be canceled and everything would just not even go anywhere because they gotta suck it up. So I get that part. Still, what in the fuck does traffic engineering have to do with equity? I understand if it's like, oh, we're gonna do what like a lot of places in the country did, including Portland, when we built, like, tore down 90% of Albina, forced everybody that was out of there, which is a historical black neighborhood, and just build I-5 through there. I get that. But like 90% of, it's probably more like 80% of the entire bridge and its whole project area, nobody lives there. So what equity? I don't get that. It's like transit equity with bus lines or something. It's like, what equity? It's literally a service for low income or no income people like myself. What? Huh? What equity are you talking about? Oh, yeah, the homeless guy, or oh, the black person who lives in this black neighborhood. You're already going to be serviced by bus lines. It's not freaking 1954. It's not 1939. It's not 1966. It's freaking 2022. It's been like that since longer than I've been alive. I'm nearly 29 now, and it's longer than I've been alive. Every single transit system, at least in the major areas, has served just about everywhere they get the funds to do it and or care to. But like, it's not going to be racially focused of like, oh yes, there's also redlinings in planning for bus lines and where they go. Or like there's some sort of a weird equity gap, and like if you didn't pass grade 9 of school, or you didn't graduate with anything beyond or if you didn't graduate with anything beyond like say a B in school, you know, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to use the right hand 3 lanes of the freeway. You're gonna have to use just the one remaining lane on the far left of the interstate bridge. I'm sorry, it's just that's the way it's got to work. Or well, your melanin level looks just a little too pale. So because of your supposed privilege that gives you, I'm gonna have you not use the bridge at all, because well, that would be racist. Like, what are we doing? How does this have anything to do with equity? It doesn't make any sense. Like, make shit make sense. I know they're sucking up, that's catering, but it's so stupid. It's so stupid. Like, this has literally nothing to do with anything. See, it's mainly economic and transportation that they're focusing on. You know, otherwise known as like fucking roads, or not light rail. How about fucking buses? That would be great. But it's a given. It's an inevitability with traffic. It doesn't make any sense. So it's just, I find that very annoying. This one's interesting. When I was scrolling through this, I saw this, and this was these are predictable. This one, I read it, and I'm like, huh? Do people legitimately have a criticism where they're like, including light rail will require a lower bridge height, thus restricting navigation clearance for vessels that use the river to transport goods? One, you're giving people a little too much credit for actually, thinking that deep and far into mass transit planning. I don't think like 99.9% of people are going to do that unless they're like 50 plus, or like me, somehow randomly came out to be a transit nerd since I was born, so I guess 50 years too early. Like, I don't, like, that part doesn't make any sense. I doubt anybody's actually doing that. So it makes me question if anybody's actually saying that. And then just in general, why would people assume that? I'm assuming because it's a train, and you have something called tractive effort, which is basically defiance of gravity. If a train has enough tractive effort, it doesn't struggle as much to get up steeper inclines. So I assume maybe that's what they're thinking, but then again, this isn't 1839, and we're not using freaking steam locomotives, or, you know, current day, and we're not using, like, 5-ton freaking diesel locomotives. Light rail vehicles. It's part of the reason why it has the name it does. It's lightweight compared to, it's called light rail, because it's not heavy rail like the rest of them. So again, it's like, I'm sure gravity still is going to be a bitch for it. I'm sure tractive effort is still going to be a bit of a pain. There's a lot more torque in it, so they probably have a higher tractive effort in general because they're electric, but I don't know, it just kind of puzzles me. But it's one of those things where I think in the end, if I don't go like detailed nerdy of actually trying to logistically figure this one out, like, well, why would people actually be like, this is a problem? And I just look at it as it is. I sincerely believe literally nobody said that, unless it's like the Army Corps of Engineers and the Coast Guard, who are the main ones who have been at war with everyone else when it comes down to the plans for the bridge. Because originally, these plans did not have a high enough height and clearance level for those ships. And thus also including the massive freaking cargo ships that go up and down the Columbia all the time. They need a lot of clearance too. And so the Coast Guard and them, but especially the Coast Guard, were being, you know, bitching a lot, and they were just pushing and pushing and pushing relentlessly to get them to change the plans to have the bridge a lot higher, which of course requires the span of the bridge to be a lot longer to accommodate for the height change to be, you know, like 50 feet higher. Now the bridge clearance is set to be, I think it's 160 something feet, or it's 180 something feet, I believe. So it's like way up there at its peak in the over the main channel. It's, yeah, it's, and obviously to there's a pun in this, decline the incline and make it less steep, you know, you're gonna have to expand the length of the bridge spans in itself a lot in order to accommodate for that much more height and to lower the angle of approach and attack on both ends, to make it a lot safer and a lot easier for vehicles of every kind to possibly get over it, and also potentially bicyclists and pedestrians. I do have a question about that aspect. How exactly, if they are, how exactly are they planning on implementing a pedestrian and or bicycle pathway or pathways into this new bridge? I assume they're probably not really doing it. They might be, but I don't think they are. But if they are, how are they planning to do it? Like, every single rendering the public have been allowed to see and advertised to with, has not, you can look at it, it clearly doesn't include anything for pedestrians or bicyclists or any other alternatives other than the light rail and the main road traffic. So that's a question I definitely have as well, is why don't we ever see that in the renderings for the IBR? It would be great to be able to see that, obviously, because I would like to see how they're going to do that. But I guess, again, we don't matter at all because we're not potential money-making figures. So that's why I have this main page up. Their meetings and events. EAG is the Environmental Assessment Group, I assume. The C, I have no idea. December 12th is going to be an important date, clearly, because that's the bi-state meeting. So, $1 million. $1 million. All right, that's cute. That's like, hey, here's some fuck you money. We don't care. Okay. So this is the About the Program page on interstatebridge.org, which is the IBR, obviously, as you can tell, website. For the record, for anybody who's watching this, whether live or in the VOD, in the description, I'm going to have these linked, each of these things linked in the description. So that way, for your sourcing and for you to be able to see each of the things I shared here, so you can share them or comment on them, whatever else you want to do with them, they'll be there for you to reference. I don't have a great memory, so I hope I'm going to remember to do that, but I'm pretty sure I will. Also, sorry if I'm, like, at any point peeking on my mic. I don't think I am. I'm pretty sure I have it low enough, because this is a new mic, new audio deck. Still got to figure that stuff out. And I am a very expressive person, especially when I'm very invested and interested and passionate about something. In this case, this involves a bunch of fucking things that I'm very passionate about and very into. So I apologize if at any point I get a little too loud. But anyway, the modified LPA. Locally preferred alternative, by the way, is the LPA. Just so you know. Oh, well, there you go. Modified locally preferred alternative refers to an agreed upon set of components that will be further evaluated through an environmental review process. It is not the final design of the replacement bridge, but it is a key milestone, setting the direction for the program as we start to test and evaluate plans for the bridge. What we learned from the review process and corresponding environmental studies will determine how we move forward, and necessary work to avoid, minimize, and or mitigate negative effects to our environment. This process will include opportunities for public comment and will inform the continuation of design. Of course, adding the part that they won't say out loud, which is that we don't give a fuck about the public comment period, and we will pretend we actually care, and we're going to take the input, but then we're going to burn it in fire, as we already have every single time, as clear by, I don't know, everybody up in Clark County, Washington, who's pretty much hated everything about this, especially the light rail part. We clearly ignored that, and we're still forcing it, so, I mean, clearly we're going to listen to you if you're an Oregonian, right? No, we want your tax money, though, so can you give us that? That'd be great, thanks. Okay, bye. The actual truth, there, that I added myself. Land bridge. What is that, a threat? Or like land bridge. I see. Bridge over land. Oh yeah, I guess it is literally... Wow, they're being literal. How bland. Ha. Just realized a pun on that. It's literally over, well, Jansen Drive, so land bridge. Great, we couldn't tell that was nothing to do with the main bridge. Okay, great. I-5 northbound to Commercial Street Loop Ramp. Vancouver. Oh, this is actually via Vancouver. Oh yes, there's the round rotunda, of course. Potential community connector. I still want to know, what in the fuck is the community connector are they talking about? Is that like a pedestrian and bicyclist bridge? I want to say yes, because that would make the most sense, especially where they keep being depicted. But I could be completely wrong as well. And I feel like I probably am because, well, this is the United States. We can go fuck ourselves with a stick up our ass, pretty much. Is the way they treat us as pedestrians and bicyclists and other low-life forms of transit that don't matter. But yeah, this is such a stupid thing. And because, again, they don't want light rail at all, the city, the county, the writers of C-Tran, and the voters, nobody wants it, but they're forcing it. This is why they have to do it on I-5. That's the quiet part that he was trying to tiptoe around without saying, by saying, Vancouver told us that, hey, this doesn't fit in our plans to run it down the street. That's the coached PR script way of saying, they said, you can go fuck yourselves, we're not going to pay for this, and we don't want anything to do with it. So if you bring it up here, sorry, we don't want it, so this is the best you're going to get. That's the reality of the situation. And yeah, if you're gonna have to put in a station that's literally against Interstate 5 in downtown Vancouver, and the station's directly placed, you know, underneath an overpass. One, that's infinitely more expensive. Two, that's a lot more concrete. And three, it'll have infinitely higher maintenance costs, and thus it's infinitely more inefficient. And plus, the catchment area of the passengers you'll be able to even service for the few people that will actually fucking use it, especially consistently, since they don't want it and everybody hates it. They only use the bus services like the Vine anyway. Like, the few people that are going to use it, if any do, is infinitely fewer, because you're the interstates, it's buffer, overpass, and the interchanges. Which also means it's infinitely less safe for all the passengers to go to and from the station. It just... the amount of excess infrastructure you have to add to make that work and be even remotely efficient or sensible makes me want to intentionally give myself a stroke, because of how much I don't want to have to deal with this bullshit stupidity of classic planning, especially around shit like TriMap, which is the one who's doing this. I also like how they say they have a waterfront light rail station. So I guess they're going to have a very elevated light rail station. So they are going to have two. They have the terminus around Evergreen Boulevard, underneath its overpass, crushed beneath it, the on-off ramps and the overpass and I-5 itself, because, you know, that makes sense. So that's one station, that's a terminus station, and then they're going to have, I guess, one on the waterfront. I guess the waterfront makes sense, but now this one's super elevated, so that's also a bunch of excess infrastructure too. Although that one makes more sense. I wish all light rail lines, you know, all the MAX lines, were built on their own proprietary corridors, elevated, but through heavy major areas like this that had, oh, I don't know, how about SkyTrain? Speaking of a Vancouver, not this Vancouver, the one further north, a SkyTrain type of station and a SkyTrain type of system. That would have made perfect sense. See, I'm not 100% against rail. I'm just... in fact, I love rail. Rail is a great mode. We need more of it in the United States. It's light rail I am against. Specifically, every form of light rail except for the original real intent for light rail. And that is, you know, the one, maybe two lines, tram lines, streetcar lines, that run in a very tight, tiny little loop around the main city centers, the main urban cores of the bigger cities. And that's it. Because they're meant to be, what is the term again? Complementary. They're meant to complement and basically help circulate people to and from bus lines and rail lines. You know, actual legitimate rail, not light rail. What we have as light rail is not light rail. This is heavy rail posing as light rail. They could have just, like an example, Blue Line, Max, so easily and very well should have just been a fucking elevated metro line. And it would have made infinitely more sense. It would have got infinitely more ridership, it would have been infinitely more reliable, infinitely more efficient, infinitely more frequent, infinitely more desirable, a lot better aesthetically. Like, it would have been so much more superior and better in every possible way. It should have just been that, which is, by the way, not light rail. I don't know why people conflate subways and metros as light rail modes now, because they're completely not. They are forms of medium rail, which usually is lumped under heavy rail. As like a subtype, it's medium rail because it's medium weight. But yeah, like, that would have made the most sense. If they would have done that with this, something like SkyTrain, basically, it would have made perfect sense. Or even Chicago's L line. Impeccable sense. But instead, no. They had to go make it run along and inside of roads in its own proprietary corridors, occasionally, that still cross directly over grade crossings and roads and so Vancouver gets what it should have been, basically, is what I'm saying. But it's still not light rail. It's heavy rail calling itself light rail, which is very annoying. Oh, man. So, obviously, the south side of the river. Oh, no, sorry, it's the north side. The north side of the river. That makes more sense, yeah. The north side of the river is where the deepest part of the river is. Yeah, that makes more sense. Especially considering its curves geographically. Yep. Shared use ramp, I assume, means bicycle and pedestrian, but I have no idea. Land bridge. And this land bridge, I'm assuming, again, what they... Okay, in this case, because they have so much green around it, when they're saying land bridge, do they mean that it's... I can't remember... I wish I remembered what the hell those things were called. But do they mean, when they say land bridge, the bridges made of land that are actually more for wildlife, which sometimes still have bicycle and pedestrian paths built into them, or I should say on top of them? If that's the case, that's smart and that's great, and I still don't understand why Oregon hasn't built a single one of those, for being supposedly so green and so loving of nature and environmentally friendly and all that stuff, and it's conscious. You'd think Oregon would have been one of the forefront leaders of that tech and building these wildlife crossings over their freeways and stuff, but no, we don't even have a single one yet. So I'm curious if when they say land bridge, it's not just, I mean, you can tell clearly, I wish I could zoom in on this. You can tell clearly this grayish line is clearly a pedestrian and or bicyclist path. Probably, hopefully, a combination. Like, I would assume that's what that is a case of. Especially considering this would make impeccable sense. So I'm assuming that's what that means, and that is what that is. So it would be built on top of a supposed land bridge, meaning potentially, because of the greenery, and especially this embankment, I want to say that means that is what it is. It's a combination of both. So they're going to add a bunch of land and raise a bunch of land, plant it up all green, and make it kind of like for that. Now, it could just still be exclusively for people, but inevitably in that sense, it gives option for wildlife like coons and everything else too. Squirrels, deer, the occasional bobcat, like, which is great. I hope that's what those are, now that I'm looking at it. So I'm just speculating, but I'm not assuming, I'm just speculating. That could be what they mean by land bridge, especially, again, looking at this. That, to me, indicates maybe they literally mean land, as in they're building up land to then make the bridge out of land, so that it's very green. Which would be great. I love that. That is a genuine form of land reclamation. What's really, actually, it's not even really reclamation, it's recreation, but reclamation in the sense that you add some back that you took away in order to, say, implant the rails, implant the roads, implant the freeways and the highways. So, yeah. I want to add a light rail station to Hayden Island. Yeah, okay. You know what? I was going to criticize that, but actually that would make more sense for people to go there and then go into Vancouver, maybe into Portland. I guess it would give them potentially a more express service, at least into Portland, at least to say Lombard, so that they can do what the Vancouverites do and just catch a bus the rest of the way. Actually, yeah, that makes sense. That one's fair. I still wish it was a busway instead and bus stop. But probably never get that. And they're going to either rebuild or maintain a arterial road bridge right next door, which clearly looks like it's a lot lower. I could be wrong. It looks perspective-wise like it's lower, but maybe it is at the same height. Oh, wait. Now that I think about it, Jesus Christ. No, that would be steep. Because you can't extend the... Yeah, no, that's a problem. You can't extend the... That is a shit idea. You can't extend the fucking, I'm already forgetting the term. Spans. You can't extend the bridge spans any. And if you do, it's very slight that you could extend the bridge spans very slightly to cut down on the angle of attack. The angle of the dangle on the entry and exit of that bridge. So that's going to be pretty steep. If it's at the height of the I-5 bridge. Although I guess, now that I think about it, it's going to be a lot lower crossing over to Hayden Island and going on to Hayden. Now that I think about it. Okay, yeah. So it's probably, maybe it's like, I don't know though. That's not that far. I was gonna say maybe it's half the height or a third of the height. It's probably one of those two. Somewhere between a third to half of the height of the peak of the I-5 bridge over the main channels. It's still pretty freaking high because, again, if the base of the bridge, which is the clearance level, is going to be by default 160 or 180 for the entire channel, and of course they have to massively extend the spans of the bridge in order to compensate so that it's not such tight, steep angle of attack for people to go, then that's still, if it's halfway, that's what, like 80 feet up? If it's 160, it's 80. If it's 189, which I keep hearing and seeing in my head, I think I saw a graphic that said it's 189 clearance. It's either like 168 or it's 189 feet of clearance. Then this is more likely at half. That would be what? Well, yeah, it would be like 94 feet up, this arterial bridge. Which then definitely makes it a lot worse and a lot more drastic. Yeah, I'm suspicious of this one. Because that might have to be pretty freaking high. Now, if it is lower than the bridge span there, okay, sure, that works. But, because then it's not even a problem, and this is a waste of time for me to even mention it. But it's good to cover all your bases and be like, I don't know. So, yeah. But yeah, this is a shared use path. So I knew I'd seen that before. So I'm assuming this is, in fact, you can see elevating up to meet with the bridge just underneath it. So I'm assuming the pedestrian and bicyclist path, shared use path, is going to be actually just underneath the bridge. Yeah, they're going to put it central underneath the bridge, it looks like. Which sucks in a lot of ways for a lot of reasons. It's more efficient use of space, but it really sucks. For sure. Yeah. I also wish they would have it on one side or the other. It's less efficient use of space again. But the reason why I wish it was that way is because you can get views cleanly both directions as a pedestrian. You get a little bit of a cutout alcove in the sides of the pedestrian bicyclist bridges, you know, on either side. You could have like one major one, or you could have two or three along the length of it, especially along the main Columbia, so that people can just look. They can just take a little break as they're walking across and just lean on the rail, or just look out there. And you could, it would actually be a boon to local, I don't know, film development making, because it would give people a lot more motivation and a lot more reason to be able to make movies and or films and take those shots down the river towards the gorge or the other way towards Astoria and get some really awesome shots at different times of year on these little alcoves. It'd be great. You know, or you go from the backside of the actual main path and look out towards it for certain shots for like movies or shows or whatever else. It'd be great B-roll. It'd be great a lot of things. And it would also bring in some extra tourism that would definitely want to do that for at least, again, the views, the pictures, and video clips they could get. It would be great. and you could enjoy the river in yet another way. Plus, one boon, especially on the east side, if you had it on one side, one on the other, with a bigger alcove, say in the middle, is you literally get also a direct line, not just down to the gorge, right, and towards Camas and Washougal and Troutdale and Corbett and all that. You get to freaking see the planes coming in and taking off from PDX, which would be so cool. Think about especially having your kids with you, or even kids you're like babysitting with you, on a walk across that bridge, and you get to just go right there. Or you take a loved one, you take a friend or a family member to the airport, but you want to see them off, and so you decide, hey, why don't we take the kids and us, because we're probably giant kids too, and go get a freaking view of their plane taking off from PDX. Think about it. That would be so cool. That would be such a great extra little thing that would actually, it would add to the amount of people that would want to use it and would use it. And it would also add to the excitement. It would add to the tourism. It would add to the draw. It would add to everything. And thus, it would give people not only a option to be able to get across the bridge for free, which is very needed, but it would also allow them to be able to take a break to enjoy the river, the view down to the gorge, and again, that. It would allow for that, and thus, and the movies and everything else. Like, it's literally would actually add, even if it's a little bit, it would actually add enough to have at least a few tenths of a percent contribution to the local economy. It seems so weird, like how that would work, but it actually makes perfect sense when you really break it down and think about it. That's why I would have one on one side and one on the other. It would make perfect sense that way. Yes, it's slightly less efficient use of space. However, it is much better. It's also even better for the health and the breathing and everything that everybody's doing, especially if they're bicycling. You're going to be breathing pretty heavily by then. So, you're going to be breathing in a lot more of all the pollution from the trucks and everything going over that river. If you're in the center like this. And also if you're underneath, falling debris is a potential issue. You have no views. You have leaks that are issues. Oil, fuel from crashes, broken glass from crashes, fires from crashes. You have so much potential massive problems and issues, and really just health risks and dangers, having the freaking thing in this most efficient format where you have the pedestrian shared use path, the pedestrian and bicyclist path underneath the bridge on either side, or even directly central underneath one of the directions, or dead center like it looks like they're doing here, where it's going to be directly between the two spans of the bridge, or the two directions of lane travel for the bridge. It makes no sense at that point. All the more reason why it's better to have one on one side, one on the other, or at least one on the east side of the bridge. It may get a lot broader, to have a lot more capacity and a lot more space for everybody to go around each other, and that means thus for people to be able to, stop, take a breather, relax, enjoy the view down the river, watching mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or uncle or brother or sister or whatever taking off from the airport or coming in. It's just, there's so much reason why that's an infinitely superior option than this. This is stupid. It makes no sense. And it's very dangerous and risky, I think, but that's me. So yeah, so that's what this is indicative of. So that's that path, which is, hang on, yeah, this. So I think that turns color, see how it's darker? It's kind of like a steel blue. And it says shared use ramp. But this is not the ramp. They just have it as a 3D cylinder, circle in an area. So I guess that's the general area they want to put it. And see how this path ends here. So I'm assuming, and it looks like there's a path in here. So I'm assuming that that's what this is it ends right at this intersection, probably on the south side, because there's a T, so you might as well put it there. And then what you do, and it's a little lower obviously, so you just do this and then bring it like this. It also makes sense actually if they could pull it over like this and then bring it down here. That would be smart too. So allow two different areas, and then they don't have to travel as far all the way down this road or whatever. But have the path go here, and then you just cross the street, go down here, boom, connect, and then you can go the rest of the way over this land bridge. So I'm assuming that's what this is. I just think because it's a slightly different color, this is not going to be a shared use. It's probably going to be either just a bicyclist or just a pedestrian path. It would be cool if it was just a pedestrian path. Just saying. But that's what I'm assuming with that. So we're supposedly to here. So we're well past the planning phase. So it's the grant application and all that. Ongoing community engagement. Earliest tolling start. Nobody likes the tolling issue. See, the thing they brought, that's another problem with these stupid idiots. They're like, oh yeah, so the CRC failed, the Columbia River Crossing failed, because literally everybody on the north side of the river and the south side, so in Oregon and Washington, kept saying, fuck this shit. Hello, Al. Kept saying, fuck this shit. We want nothing to do with it if it's going to have tolls. The majority kept saying that with the CRC. So it died, finally, after years. This is its supposed replacement, the IBR, the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program, Project, whatever you want to call it. And they're still insisting to put fucking tolls in! And now light rail. That wasn't there with the CRC. I think I heard one proposal for the CRC having that, and it died really quick. Because, again, just like now, Clark County voters, Clark County themselves, City of Vancouver, and CC Rider, wrong one, C-Tran users and riders were like, fuck the light rail. We want nothing to do with it. We fucking hate your light rail. We hate your Max. Stop trying to make us do light rail. We want our Vine. We want our buses. Fuck you guys. We're not paying for it. We're not having it. And I remember that was one of the proposals they had for the CRC as well, and that died almost like that. And it was alongside of tolling. They're still trying to force tolls, which is literally the reason why the CRC died. It is the dominant reason. And they're like, so light rail and tolling, the reasons why all the CRC plans just literally are in their graves decaying right now because it didn't work. We're the replacement. We're supposed to have learned from that, but instead we're like, no, we're still going to make you have to have tolls and light rail, and we're not going to take no for an answer, and all Oregonians are going to pay for, specifically, the light rail. You're paying every penny because they don't want to pay for it, and so we're like, fine, you don't have to pay for it. We'll make you pay for it in Oregon. How's that sound? Even though a lot of you don't want it. Fucking classic bullshit. This is so stupid. Like, I get it, and it could eventually, in probably 30 to 60 years, pay for itself. But just like, because then, yeah, it would be able to eventually pay for itself and recuperate the costs eventually. Like I said, 30 to 60 years usually is the average for it to, depending on the toll price, to be able to recuperate its costs of the construction and planning and all the other horse shit bureaucracy that goes into this kind of an infrastructure project. But I guarantee this isn't, like, we're going to get nowhere with this frickin' bridge project because it's just CRC all over again, basically. It's just rebranded. Classic. Oh, yeah, that's right. Kind of like Tramet with Better Bus, rebranding it suddenly to Forward Together. It's a totally different thing, we promise. It's exactly the same thing. They just chose a different name and different different logo. So stupid. Ugh. So I don't even think this is going to happen. Like, I legitimately don't. Because they're not letting this go. But they're not letting the light rail go. It's already legally bound that if this goes through, Oregonians are the exclusive payers in every bit of the life cycle for the stupid extension of the Yellow Line up into frickin' Vancouver. We have to pay for everything from its planning to its construction to its maintenance, its running and functioning, the trains themselves. Everything. Everything. They legally made sure that they could not have a damn penny paid towards it, because that's nobody up there wants it. So why do we even have it going there if nobody wants it? Well, because TriMet's going to have its way, and they just want our fucking money so they can get their kickbacks. It's so fucking infuriating. 2 reasons why the CRC died, and they're just like, yeah, so we're not letting that go. It's not gonna happen unless they pull the entire, both states pull the same shit that TriMet does, and they're like, no, we're gonna force you to pay for it anyway. Like, you don't have a choice. That's the only way I could see this working, legitimately. Like, reason why it died. Light rail. Reason why CRC died. They just fucking rebranded. That's all they did. So this one's interesting because this is from cityobservatory.org, and I've heard of them before, and I know that they are actually legitimately, like, considered a valuable resource of, like, constructive criticism and everything. And I saw this via, of all things, the Google Images search that I was doing for the IBR logo. And I saw this as one of the pictures, and I'm like, oh, it's a con. It's very interesting to me. So it's not just like an exclusive to you and me type of thing, or like the average, like, random people. Like, this is bullshit. It's clear that many people still see this as complete horseshit. I have to laugh at that. Literally echoes exactly what I just said, doesn't it? I literally just said it's just the CRC rebranded. Oregon Washington Highway Builders have rebranded the failed CRC, Columbia River Crossing, as a bridge replacement project. It's not. See, I'm not the only one. There's somebody else that says the same thing. This was July 2nd, by the way, of this year. Less than 30% of the cost of the nearly $5 billion project is actually replacing the existing highway bridge, freeway bridge. I will die on that hill. They are different. Outdated terminology. Interstate highway system. Needs to die. Like this plan. This is actually less than 30% of the cost is nearly $5 billion project. Yeah, it's for actually replacing it, which is just obscene. And it's funny because that kind of fits with the matches when you're on the main page of the IBR, and you can even skip back and see it if you're live here. But like, oh, it's agonizing. They're like, oh, hey, let's celebrate and pat ourselves on the back. We just got $1 million from the feds to help fund the bridge replacement. $1 million for replacing a interstate bridge that's going to at least have 4 lanes in each direction, probably closer to 5 to 6. Spanning one of the biggest rivers and widest in the entire U.S. and one of the widest points of it. $1 million. That's really going to help a lot, isn't it? I swear to God, I even said that then. It's like fuck you money. It's like the feds are like, here's some fuck you money. Because we don't actually give a fuck about this project. So have $1 million from our bridge replacement program. Because they have that, the feds have that weird thing that's specifically focused on the national, like, funding of replacing the aging interstate bridges, which obviously the I-5 is one of them. They granted them $1 million. It's like, here, have a penny. Fuck around and find out what you can do with that. There's one option. You can choke a child to death with it, or actually a cat, I guess. But you don't want to be a monster, do you? Which is funny because, of course, the joke is that that's the feds saying that to themselves, just smaller level. Because it's like, you already are that bad. Most of the cost is for widening it. So see, I wasn't wrong when I said widening. By way of saying probably more like 5 to 6 lanes. This might even be, oh god. If we end up like a super freeway type of situation, like down in frickin' LA, or god, the I Want to Die Katy freeway in Katy, Texas, which is actually Houston. And we have like 7, 8 lanes in each direction. I want to die. Most of the costs for widening it and rebuilding interchanges for miles north and south of the bridge crossing, replacing the current bridge is somewhere between 500 million and 1 billion. Wow, I didn't even know that. So just the total replacement is actually just supposedly projected currently to be 500 million to 1 billion. I guarantee it's going to be more expensive than that, especially if they do the light rail. Oh, it will be a lot more than that. Especially just for inflation. Jesus fucking Christ. So then the widening, if that's how much it costs to simply widen and add more lanes. Oh god, I'd hate to see the final price tag on that. That's probably at least, what is the current projection again? 5 billion? So it's probably at least $12 billion. And by the end of it, it would probably be even more than that. With increasing inflation and everything else. 5-mile long freeway, a replacement bridge, is like saying if you buy a new $55,000 truck, it's a tire replacement. That's a great analogy. Who is this again? Joe Courtwright. That is a great analogy, man. I love that. Nearly a decade ago, the CRC... It's already been almost a decade? It's already been almost a decade since the CRC died. Are you serious? It doesn't seem like it's been that long. Holy shit! Damn! It's been that long. Fuck, it's been a long time apparently. I didn't know that. Fucking hell. Oh my god. The collapse of his own fiscal weight. After both Oregon and Washington legislatures refused to pony up an estimated $450 million each, as basically billion, as well as signing a blank check to cover future cost overruns and revenue shortfalls. Project advocates delayed for as long as they could, revealing the project's true price tag. As always, you just give it like an extra 5 to 8 years before they actually get like a quarter of the way through construction, and then it's always like, oh, by the way, you know that $5 billion projection we had? It's currently at $12.5 billion. So could you give us more of your tax money? That'd be great, thanks. It's always that way. Fucking bureaucracy. Jesus Christ. Actually asking for the money, and when they finally did, they balked. It's a newly rechristened Interstate Bridge Replacement program have been assiduous, I haven't seen that word before, in their efforts not to talk about the scale or the cost of the program. I skipped the line. Close enough. In 2 years, they've yet to produce a single new comprehensive illustration of the project, something that's standard for major projects. Well, apparently they have now. They're very basic and they're still pretty shitty, but they have done it, I guess, to their credit. I don't know. Let's see. The new name is part of the sales pitch. Yeah, it's rebranding. That's part of advertising. That's how that stuff works. If it didn't work the first time, you just completely rebrand. Get a new logo, get a new name, boom. And then act like you're totally unique and different. Maybe have a few new and different faces than you had with the last time that had the prior name and branding. So that people might be fooled into thinking, oh, this is new because, hey, look, there's new faces that are representing it and talking about it publicly in the videos and everything, right? It's just basic psychology. It's super stupid. According to Clark County today, I'm already skipping shit. Ever since attempting to breathe life, to breathe life back into the CRC project, Oregon and Washington Departments of Transportation, and their... That's a French word I'm not even going to try to pronounce because fuck French. I said it wasn't. Coterie? Is that actually how you say that? Probably not. Of consultants have been engaged in an extensive effort to rebrand the project to make it more sellable. Sellable, whatever. Yeah, well, yeah. It's really not more sellable, but okay. Clark County today over the past... You know what? It would be interesting, because I know people can do this. Try to find out when, in reality, when the IBR's official Twitter account was created and pages. I'd like to see if you could find out by doing the integral work in investigation and like data and everything, you could find out that in reality, they're not new. They weren't created for when this started. They were actually the original CRC accounts. I bet if anything, at least the social media accounts, maybe the web page is new, but I bet if anything, the social media accounts, if you are somebody with that skill and that knowledge and ability to do that, that you would actually really quickly be able to do that little research into the code and the data and find out that, oh, hey, would you look at that? It is actually the CRC accounts. They just rebranded the social media accounts when nobody was looking and said, hey, by the way, hi, we were totally just created these accounts because this is totally a new thing and it totally wasn't rebranded. I bet they rebranded their fucking social media accounts. I bet you could figure that out pretty quickly, and I wouldn't be surprised if you investigated, which would be smart to do, to be able to go to the actual website and investigate its code and find out if it was already registered originally as CRC, and thus it just again rebranded. That would be smart. I would like to see if they did that, because then that would really corroborate this, and you would have a heck of an ability to, if you wanted to slander the hell out of it, and say, this is the shit that they do. This is genuinely all that they're doing is constant rebranding. So if this one dies, watch for them to rebrand it again, because it's not going to be different. That would be very smart to do. So 5.3 million has been for... So advertising. They spent over a quarter of their total spending as of July 2nd of this year just on frickin' PR. Just on public relations. Just on advertising and branding. Oh my god, that's so stupid. So they really are trying aggressively to push this as a sales prop. This is so stupid. Again, it's the classic case. It's literally perfectly comparable and exactly the same as what TriMet is doing with the whole Forward Together thing. Better Bus died pretty much after it started, so they're like, what else could we name it? Let's call it Forward Together. It sounds more politically correct to Portland, so if we, and especially if we keep touting the word equity as like our main thing, we're sure to get a lot more support for that, right? Because SJWs are, well, oh god. Well, they're not usually 100% wrong. It usually breathes life into shit when they rebrand it for SJW shit when it's West Coast big cities, unfortunately. Yeah. Since the PR consultants failed to get that talking point, to get to that talking point, or no, get it to the White House. So even Biden still called over that. Now, there's going to be people that are going to be like, well, but actually, he's currently senile and going through a really bad case of dementia. And therefore, it doesn't count, and it's not fair to say that it was because they failed to rebrand. You're lying because political biases are indicate my hand-me-down sparkling cider drinking obsession. It doesn't work. I mean, it works if it doesn't... It works if you don't think about it. So I was trying to say, I really fucked up on that. Never mind. No, I'm gonna. Or maybe I'll just rebrand it. Don't want to do that. Jesus. Yeah, that's really fucking annoying. Let's see. The project's public materials talk mostly about the existing bridge. Go figure. And they're still doing that in their latest advertising. Like, well, you know, see, the problems with the current design is this, that, the other thing. And lack of equity. I hate all of you. Almost every reveal of the project is 5 miles long, that it contemplates widening the stretch to 12. Is that total? If it's total, that's way better. But if it's 12 lanes in each direction, I'm going to fucking kill a child that next one I see on the street. Oh god, I swear to fucking god, if we end up with our own Katy freeway, and especially for that short of a distance, I'm going to fucking come unglued. I'm gonna fucking go through a psychotic break. That is, like, legitimately, that's how much that hurts my head and insults me. Ugh, $5 billion. For a minimum tolls for $5 every round trip. That's the river. Round trip, $5. That's not as much as they're trying to do, and that they're planning on doing with, well, that they were originally planning to do with the new bridge that they're building in Mobile, Alabama. It was originally, I think they proposed $10, I think, and then they went down to $7.50, and then that died for a few years, and now with their current governor, they revived it with new plans to where it was, I think it's supposed to be $25 for a month pass, so you never have to pay another time. You just keep paying with your pass. Every time you go by, you just show your pass and it's paid for a month. Isn't that bad, actually? I think if you have to have tolls, which I fucking hate the idea of, but I understand the reasons why you might do that. It's like, you know, it does make sense, I guess, that you'd have it that low, but the residents had to really, really aggressively fight for that. And I think they even actually got their own lawyers to prepare for a lawsuit, and they're finally like, okay, fine, we'll cheapen it a lot. And so I think the current price is like, I think they said it's like $250, I think. Although I don't know if it's round trip. I don't think it's round trip. So I guess it would be the same price if it's round trip. I'd have to go watch that video back again from a traffic engineer that was reviewing it. But if it's round trip for $250, then they're going a lot cheaper there, and they successfully did that. $5 is not as bad as it could be, especially considering it's a round trip. But I don't think you're gonna, even with adding, what is it currently? I think it's currently on the bridge 4 lanes. So adding 2 more lanes in each direction, I don't think you're legitimately gonna pull that off. But no. Okay, wait, hang on a second. So look at the current size of it here, and then look at it here. These are the main 2 lanes, right? Right here. And I know they want to add auxiliary lanes on a lot of the freeway segments, but these are actually, okay, these are ramps to this street. Looks like, yeah. That is an ugly, ugly mess. That still looks like a super freeway. Like one in Texas or one in, what am I thinking of? LA. Which is not a good idea. That is terrible. But see, this is obviously clearly the reality of what they're trying to go for. And you can even see it in the... In fact, actually, I just realized that was what we were looking at earlier. In fact, before you got here, Al. So you can look back at it later. That was the freaking image we were looking at earlier. That makes it make more and more sense because it looks identical to that. Right there. So that makes a lot more sense. In terms of the adding of lanes. I didn't think about that aspect of it. I just simply saw it and I'm like, that looks terrible. What am I looking at? But I could tell that image that we saw was... It's happened again. We have the sex bots coming in. Thank you for your contributions. I appreciate you. And I'll always leave them there because, you know what? Fuck it. No, don't do that. That's a bad idea. You'll probably get electrocuted because that's a terrible joke. Anyway, sidetracking myself. What am I trying to say? Right. So I realized that what that image was the traffic engineers' renderings. So it's not the ones that we would publicly, or we are publicly supposed to see and get, because they are actually specifically for the engineers and for the city councils and counties and states to look at and see the actual plans that they have for it. The actual engineering blueprints, basically, for what they're trying to build. That is that right there. That's what we were looking at. In fact, yeah, there's Jansen Drive right there. So actually, I'm going to probably save this GIF because there's no reason why I shouldn't. Oh, now it's not working correctly. Oh, that's weird. Why is the GIF only showing one thing now? Hopefully it works. Shave. Maybe I'll just save it from here too and see if it changes. Actually, I can't see if it changes. It's the same thing though. So it's showing as black. So I think it is not working correctly. I'm gonna try to overwrite it and see if that helps. Hopefully it does. Otherwise somehow it's breaking in transition. But that is a mess. Oh God, that's terrible. Oh, Harold. Oh wait, no, it's right here. This is the image I was looking at. Oh, that's right. That's how I saw the city observatory in the con title. That's how I. No shit. Okay, duh. Right. So that much of the area would be paved over in a complex web of off and on ramps, flyovers, and multi-lane arterials. Sorry, I think I just died and vomited a fetus. That's terrible. Little wonder the residents of the island are strongly opposed to the project, saying the massive footprint of Hayden Island will destroy our community. Fuck you. In the beginning, in the before times, I had a drink. No, in the beginning of this, I did show you that video straight from the IBR's YouTube channel that started the whole thing off on the light rail segment of the plans and everything, and how it doesn't make any sense, and they're basically straight up admitting it via PR scripts that Vancouver wants nothing to do with it. They don't even want it, so they have to shove it in between I-5 and overpass and on and off ramps, the station, because nobody wants it there, and they don't want it in the streets because it doesn't fit with their plans, as the script goes for PR, to not admit that they literally aren't going to pay for it and they don't want it at all. It's like, so in that video, they literally were mentioning the fact that, like, we're moving to Hayden Island now, and they're like, oh, Hayden Island residents, they want the most minimal impact they can, which is why we're doing this. And they showed something obviously very different than this. And that was I say much more, it's not that much time has passed since the 2nd of July, but much more recent really produced video. But again, it's still, I'm sure, advertising to get them to say yes, or be like, okay, that's much better. So now we'll start listening and actually considering this. And then if they actually accept it, they're probably going to do this anyway. This. No, that's the south side. Okay, oh, it's over here. Isn't that the south side? No, it looks like the channel. Hang on, what am I looking at now that I think about it? Where is this? This looks like the Portland side, which means this should be Hayden Island. But clearly it's not. Because it's going way too far, and you can actually see the buildings of, I think that's downtown. Huh? So wait, is this the north side? So this would be Hayden Island, I'm assuming. Oh God, it's even worse than I thought. That makes me actually legitimately sick to my stomach. Oh God. Oh good. Oh yeah. It is Hayden Island. Okay, yeah, look at that. So I don't know how I didn't notice the river on this side and that side. I'm not braining. Jesus fucking Christ. So this is Hayden Island. So yeah, like, oh God. Oh. Why don't you just fucking physically decimate Hayden Island so that it can't exist anymore, so you can just build the fucking bridge over it, because you don't have to worry about Hayden Island anymore because it doesn't exist. Because you fucking dug it up and sunk it and blew it up with fucking dynamite and thermite into the fucking river. Like, why not just do that? That would be better and make more sense and be more efficient than this. Speaking of another fuck you moment, this is like a total fuck you to everybody there. And the island itself. Oh my God. Holy shit, that's terrible. Ugh. To conceal all these elements of the project enters the real project, the real reality, and why it would cost as much as it does. Yeah, no, This is an important thing to look at. This is a great article. Well done by this guy again. I already forgot his name. Started with a J, if I recall correctly, didn't it? Yep, Joe. Joe Courtwright. Not Cartwright. Courtwright. Quite forthright. Yes, I ignored the H. Calling it is replacement. We already read that. The bridge, part of the IBR is less than 30% total cost. Whoopsies. Total costs. I didn't mean to do that. Also meant to be an F11 the entire time, but hey, look at this. Neat. I love that. That's a AR and AI rendering. So beautiful. My TARDIS. Let's see. 2012 forensic accountant. Forensic accountant? Those two words don't seem like they should go together at all. Whenever I think of forensic, I only think of things that are related to criminal stuff and death. So that's forensic accountant. That's a bit weird. Tiffany Coach, whatever, undertook a detailed audit of the CRC cost estimates. Her analysis showed that the portion of the project costs attributable to the bridge structure itself, so the actual bridge replacement, was $796.5 million. Her analysis showed these costs represented just 23% of the, for that project, and at the time, $3.5 billion price tag. Think on something for people who actually have the networking, the connections, the ability, the knowledge to be able to dig up this kind of shit and find it and remember it. And actually at the time think, I need to save this. They probably have a specific folder for it. Thank you for you people who do this. Al included. For the TriMet data, that is. 90% confidence level. So the light, yeah, see, it's always the light rail that's the most expensive, and we already know the light rail is going to be infinitely more than that. That might be what they have to pay, and it never is. It's what we are paying as taxpayers. They always force us to pay for light rail in full, like always 98% at the least amount. So, and this would have been infinitely more because at the time, this is 2012, we just had the Green Line implemented, and that cost taxpayers, what was it, $5 billion, I think? This is going across a fucking bridge. Like, what is it, probably like 3/4 of a mile completely across all the channels of the bridge? Just the river alone? Or the bridge, the river? Just the channels of the river alone? It would have been infinitely more expensive than just the $5 billion we paid, and that's inexcusably thievery, like kleptocracy. And then for the Orange Line, the latest one, we paid $7.8 billion for that. It's a 7.8 mile long line, aka it's literally $100 million per tenth of a mile, or $1 billion exactly per mile. 80% of the tracks for it were already constructed and there in perfect condition because they're owned and ran and leased to TriMet use by the cargo rail companies. Specifically, I think it's Union Pacific who owns that yard down there, and thus those railways. So you're not paying for that either, but we still were forced to pay $7.8 billion in taxes for a line that, by the way, 53 or 56% of residents in the corridor and all riders rejected. But of course, we still got it. I.e., we're still going to be forced to have this light rail line, clearly, and pay for it when they build the bridge, if they ever do. Like, in 920, that's gonna, that I would guarantee, if they got it done when they figured they would have got it done. So let's say 2019 is when they figured they would complete at least that portion of the bridge. And just the bridge part, I guarantee that would have cost us taxpayers at least $10 billion. I guarantee it's probably more because, again, it's a massive mega project of a freaking interstate bridge. So even just its portion would have been probably infinitely more that we'd be forced to pay for, especially considering it would obviously be a stupid TriMet extension and or new line. Yeah, so just think about that. Like that, Jesus Christ. And now for inflation. Fuck. Dear Lord. Acuity Group. Differ from the summary level budget breakdowns publicly distributed at the time by the staff. Acuity, according to them, a CRC transferred a portion of the costs associated with interchange overpass construction to the bridge portion of the project. Oh, well, it's an overpass. That's probably why they're like, well, it requires pillars too. It's elevated too, so it's technically the bridge. Plus, it connects to the bridge, so therefore, it's bridge, bridge, bridge. On ramp, off ramp. It's all the same as bridges. So bridge, 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 bridge. Do you see a difference? No. If you do, you're fired. Probably literally. Dear Lord above. So is that it? No, but there's an unnecessarily massive gap. Whoops. The curve. What's with the curve? I don't understand. Ugh. No, yeah, so that's that is, oh god, that is an egregious amount of lanes. That's offensive amount of lanes in each direction. So it is. It's a super freeway. It's mimicking Texas and LA for their mega super freeways that never helped demand unless you had the Katy Freeway, which had to keep expanding more and more lanes until eventually they had, what is it currently, 27 lanes in one direction? That's not collectively. That's literally one direction. I think they have 27 lanes on, I think it's the eastbound portion. Or, no, sorry, not 27, 17. I'm being dumb. 17 lanes, though. But 17 lanes. Like, if you get to a point where it's like, well, we're still getting too congested. We got to keep going. It's not enough. Got to keep adding lanes until we strike efficiency. And then once we strike efficiency with 17 lanes, turns out it requires, well, hey, then we'll say, well, that's why it's perfectly defensible and a great idea to support lane expansions. Infinite lane expansions, you know, until you hit your efficiency, where there's consistent movement of vehicles without getting stuck. It makes me want to fucking scream. And I know Eric defends that a lot, by the way. Which, both me and Eric know how much we could not be more in complete opposite ends of the spectrum on that from each other. God damn. I've told it to him before, and I'll tell it to anybody who actually supports that. You are a brainless fucking idiot. And you should be shot on sight. Like, you're that stupid. And it's that indefensible. And I stand by that. I will die on that hill to support that statement. Because it's just like, yes, obviously you should be shot on sight is an exaggeration. It's emphatic to make a fucking point. But it's like, the rest of it's fact. Like, I mean it. It's an observable fact. I even told that to his face. I'm like, it's observable fact. You're a fucking idiot. This shit. Fucking hell. How many lanes is that through the blur? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It looks like 7 lanes. So it'd be 14 total lanes. Not counting potential auxiliary lanes. Blah. So yeah, they want to expand it even more. It has a minimum added... oh god, it's a minimum added in some expenses. They're cut out. The North Portland Harbor Bridge, spanning the slough, the slough. I know how that is. You couldn't pick which I want to keep my head keeps saying syntax. It's not the right word, but which words you wanted to use to form that sentence. South Columbia River course, which would add about 200 million. That means is IBR, we're just about replacing the I-5 bridge. The cost would be far smaller, and all likelihood less than 1 billion. Well, no, especially with counting for inflation, it would be infinitely more. It's always infinitely more, billions more than they project, always, for any of these mega projects. Once they actually get even a quarter, let alone halfway through construction, it just balloons every time because they're intentionally, to sell it to you as a voter and as a resident, they have to give you a random number of the actual cost they know it's likely to cost, or guaranteed to cost at least. They intentionally take a chunk of that, a very small chunk, but a chunk of it, to then give to you to say, see, not that expensive. And it's totally worth it, and then advertise, of course. And it's like, that's what they do. Because then you also can say, well, you're a liar, and they're like, no, we're not lying. They wouldn't admit it, but it's like, it's a portion of the actual total costs that we projected. Which, of course, is the quiet part they won't say out loud. Because you wouldn't support it. It's the way this shit works. It's so annoying. So, no, it would cost a lot more than that. It's just the current projected price of $5 billion. At least double it. I guarantee it's going to be a lot more than that, though. Especially with inflation. Again, especially in comparison to a 7.8 mile long light rail line that already had 80% of the tracks built. Yeah. It's going to cost a fuck ton more than just that. This is just so unacceptably ridiculous. The epic failure of the CRC had everything to do with the project's unwillingness to talk frankly about finances, or honestly, how about that, about finances, and the same mistake is being repeated this time as well. It's because it's the same thing, like this guy had said. Like, I could tell it to this guy's face. Like, it's because, like you said, like I've said, like anybody with a brain cell knows, it's the same exact project. It's the same exact plans and everything. It's just rebranded as new. But it's the same thing as the CRC. It's just a different name, a different logo. And now focus specifically on the word equity. Like, that's it. Everything to do with the project's willingness to do that. So it's fair to ask, why should we rely on 10-year-old cost estimates and sussing out the actual cost of replacing? Yeah. No, I mean, it's absolutely the case. There's the word. Boondoggle. Say the big word with me. Boondoggle. We do. Yup. I mean, okay. So I know that some people, especially international people, if we're going to focus or talk about tolls for a minute, I know that most people, especially international people, would say, well, Poland is a nation of nothing but toll roads and toll freeways and highways. Everything pretty much there is infinitely tolled. But they do just fine. Nobody hates that there. Like, it pays to maintain the roads. But when I was saying that, I realized actually, technically, it's probably mostly just paying to maintain, the toll booths and the enforcement of the tolls. But okay, anyway, but no, yeah, it's like, I know people are going to say that, and they're going to use other examples, whether it's España, so Spain, or wherever else that, has almost a religious amount of toll roads and toll freeways. They'll be like, well, tolls are great, they help pay for the road. It's like, technically yes, but if you have it in a somewhat affordable fashion, like, it's going to take decades upon decades to ever be able to recuperate in full the costs that it costs to build the fucking thing. So to me, it's still not a valid form of defense. I get where you're coming from. Because yes, it could be used for that, but then you also have to trust that your government would actually, you know, use it for that. Like, and anybody with, again, like I keep saying in the stream, a brain cell, even a single one, that's half alive and half dead, knows you can't trust government to ever do what it says it's there to do. It doesn't happen. Anyway, I highly recommend you go check this out. Again, I'm going to be linking all things we have in this stream and video in the description below. So when this is a VOD, if you're watching it then, make sure you check out the description, because all the links to each of these things are going to be right there for you to be able to use, reference, share, whatever it is that you're going to do with them or want to do with them. So yeah. Now this one's just fucking funny to me. As soon as I saw this, I laughed. I'm like, well, you don't say. It's because, again, like I said earlier, it's because of the Coast Guard and these cargo shipping companies, but mainly the Coast Guard, actually, that was relentless in bitching and bitching and bitching and bitching at both states, the cities, the counties, and everything involved in the whole program of the IBR. They were relentless. They would not stop harping on them and trying to get them to be like, you will not, we will, because it's the one barrier, by the way. Coast Guard is always the one single barrier to any bridge projects in the United States, but especially around here. And it's because of the federally legal grounds of like how it has to work. The Coast Guard has to be accommodated at all costs. So whatever they demand, you have to give that to them with whatever bridges you build and or replace. The reason why they would not stop bitching and bitching and bitching at the IBR group is because of the fact that the original plans were insistent to be about the same height that the current bridge is, and they're like, it needs to be at least doubled for safety and safe passage and everything underneath these ships. Otherwise, this doesn't work, and we're not going to allow any plans to go past or to be accepted. So it's not, this is a failed thing, and you're never going to get anywhere unless you cede to us and give us what we require of you, which is to have at least doubled clearance underneath the new bridge. So that's how that happened, and how we ended up getting to this current point in time where the new bridge plans, or the current bridge plans, have a clearance, as I keep saying, of either it's 160 something feet or 180 something feet from below the bottom of the bridge. That's the full clearance, obviously, of the bridge. So the structure is solid and rigid. It doesn't have to have a lift necessarily because of the fact that it's has that much clearance. So even the biggest, most wholly overloaded cargo ships are going to be able to pass through with plenty of clearance, and they're not going to have a problem. Same with the tallest, the highest masted freaking Coast Guard ships. So they got their wish, but because of that, it's so fucking high. Now, for context, the current bridge, this one you see in this photo, is 80 feet at clearance over the main channels here. 80 feet. So this is 80 feet from the bottom of the bridge to the water surface. And of course they have to count for tides and flood stages. So there's a equilibrium and an average with both of those collectively to put together that they then have as the official normal height of the water levels. And so it's from that surface level that they calculate to the bottom of the bridge. It's 80 feet in this case. Currently, it's again either 160 or 180 something feet is what the new bridge would be over the river. What that means, okay, is the fact that you have to, massively extend and lengthen out the spans of the bridge, the total span of the bridge. So the bridge has to be a lot longer than it currently is in order to accommodate that height clearance over the river. Because, you know, if you keep it, say, the current length, the problem is the angle is probably going to be something like this, at least at the start. You can try to, you know, and this, actually, I guess it would be kind of like that through the entire point until you get to its apex over the channels on the north side of the river, and then it goes back down. And it would be basically like this angle, probably. Both sides, at least, if not more severe. That's not safe under any circumstances whatsoever. The current proposal, even with the lengthened spans, which really lengthened it a lot, it still increased the angle of attack and approach and decline on the bridge, the new bridge proposal, so much so that it would literally be, I think it's either tied with or just barely taking the title for the steepest bridge approach and exit in the entire country of the United States of America, from the new Tampa Bay Bridge that they have built. I think it was completed in 2016 for the new Interstate Bridge they had built over Tampa Bay. That has currently the highest angle, so, yeah, steepness to its incline and decline, ascension and descension of the approaches and exits of the bridge. At, I believe it's 4.7 degrees, which down there, that's fine. They, once in like every decade at most, and it's usually once every 30 to 50 years, right? 3 to 5 decades, they'll experience a frost, a freeze. But they're not going to have black ice ever. Here, we have black ice now more than ever because of how much warmer it is. And thus, you know, when we decide to get a little closer to normal, like lately, this autumn so far, even though it's really late, it's finally here, we're wet. I mean, we're really wet. So if we get a bunch of rain and then it clears off enough to cool off and freeze, we have black ice all over the place. And that makes this new bridge proposal super dangerous at 4.7 degrees of freaking angle on your approaches on the bridge, and thus exits. But in this case, the angle's either literally 4.7 or I think it's 4.8 degrees. So it's either tied for the most steep angles of approach and exits of a bridge in the entire country, or it is going to be just barely stealing the title from the newer Tampa Bay Bridge. That is unacceptably bad. Like, because you don't think, oh, 4 degrees, that's not that much. It is when you're talking about freezing in black ice, especially, you know, on a bridge over a fucking river. And also because of the river, you know, it's gonna have a lot more moisture. That's another danger to it. So it's gonna be a lot more likely to have a lot more black ice and freeze a lot more frequently. So that's another reason why that's a really negative and bad thing that's got to be, you know, accounted for. So, but they don't care because all they care about is making sure it happens. And that is really unfortunate. But that's a fact that they failed to tell anybody either. That is actually a dangerous, this time of year, angle to have on your approaches to your bridge. Is that steep of an angle of 4+ degrees. There's a reason why bridges aren't supposed to go that high of angles on their approaches and exits. And they almost never do anywhere in the world, but especially here in the United States. It just doesn't happen. It's against standards because it's not safe. And yet, here we are, and there's only one bridge that goes over 4 degrees, and it's the Tampa Bay one, and now this new interstate bridge is required, actually. They can't get it any lower of an angle on their approaches because of how much higher the Coast Guard requires them to have it in order for this to even be something legit to consider. Which is just insane to think. So that's why I laughed at this when I first saw this headline, because I'm like, well, you don't say. The bridge is gonna just loom and tower like a brutalist piece of intrusive cancer tumor over Vancouver. Vancouverites are absolutely correct. The critics are absolutely correct. It's funny to me, though, that it's specifically the transportation and social justice organizations that were going on the attack, and this is in June, because of how, like, high and towering the bridge is going to be over Vancouver as it comes into the city. What does that have to do with social justice? I don't know. It's a frickin' traffic engineering eyesore and like mindfuck that you will always hate, and it will be brutally ugly and disgusting. But I don't see what that has to do with anything social justice. So I'm not sure why SJW organizations are attacking at it and being like, oh my god. Especially considering, I guess, I'm assuming they probably think something about equity too, and it's like, that, what? Like, huh? That doesn't work. Transportation, I don't understand either. Like, if it's just from, like, potential lines on I-5, I could understand it because they have to go a lot further to get back to wherever they have been, are, or going. So I can understand that, I guess. But, you know, if that's the case. But even then, like, C-Tran has, I think, 2 bus lines. Trimet doesn't even have a bus line anymore that goes over it. They killed that thing years ago because of the yellow line, and that nobody was freaking riding it. So now they just have another bus line that kind of goes up to Lombard. I can't remember if it goes any further. But, like, basically nobody takes it. So there's certainly nobody to try and go to and from Vancouver. They don't even take the yellow line. So they had to kill that line because it's just like it doesn't have any use really. So Trimet doesn't even have a line that goes across the river. So even if that was the case, it would just be C-Tran. But as far as I can tell, C-Tran, that's not their problem with it. Again, it's the light rail line. That's what they have the problem with. Not the angle of attack and how much further the bridge would have to extend into Vancouver and how high it's going to tower. And if it has to do literally with just simply how high it would loom and tower, like a brutalist tumor over downtown Vancouver and State Route 563 or something like that? That runs along the waterfront there. Like, I don't see how they would have a problem with that, because that's not really, that doesn't do anything to their service or their ability to do anything at all, actually. So I don't, hell, it actually allows them to add a bigger transit center there, and maybe even replace or add one, or maybe an auxiliary overflow one there, too. One of their Vine lines, their BRT lines, runs along that state route into downtown Vancouver, so why not do that? Like, actually, you could have a stop there, especially considering if they really do get away with this, and this is the plan that goes through, you'll have this shared use pathway that's going to come off the bridge anyway, that's going to have bicyclists and pedestrians on it. And by that point, now that they've ridden 5 miles off a bridge, you know, around all the way over a bridge, plus whatever else distance they were going, they're probably going to be like, hell yeah, I'll take a freaking BRT line that runs pretty frequently. Why the fuck wouldn't I? You know, like, it would make perfect sense to have that. So I did see actually it as a potential boon if they just use their brains and be like, well, actually, this gives us an opportunity. It sucks, it's ugly, it's terrible, but it does give an opportunity. Yeah, hell, you could do something kind of old school. You could build a really epic old school honor, you know, like, salute and honor to like the 90s legends of skating and those skate parks, interurban skate parks. You could build a kick-ass, no pun intended, a kick-ass skate park literally right directly underneath the fucking bridge on the north side of the state route. There's no reason why you couldn't do it. It would actually be phenomenally smart. I actually think that would be great. That would be hilarious. And it would really fit with the West Coast and the Northwest, right? skating's becoming much more popular again. So I wouldn't, like, the amount of users you probably actually get for that thing would be great. But it's just in general a great opportunity to put various types of parks down there. You can even put, I don't know, some sort of a naturified or greenified, parkway on the other side, again, the north side of, because you already have it on the south side, on the north side of the I-5 bridge. That could work too, underneath it. Or, better yet, I think, you could actually place, like, parks that fit with that area. Something almost like a New York City does with underneath their overpasses and their bridges that loom way up. They'll put, if they don't put a skate park or something in there, they put basketball courts in there. They could put a bunch of different kinds of, recreational park facilities underneath the towering tumor that is the bridge. There's actually opportunity in it, in a way. It sucks, it's ugly, it's brutalist, it's terrible, but at the same time, at least you could also see, well, there is also opportunities to fill that gap in there now with something that actually works. You could fit, I don't know, a building, a resource center or something underneath it too, if you wanted to, I guess. But then that would be, I guarantee, one of those things that the SJW organizations, social justice organizations, would lose their shit about, because it's like, well, of course you put it there. It's terrible for their health. It's terrible for noise. It's terrible for breathing. It's terrible for everything. It's ugly. It's brutal. It's disgusting. This is why you're white, because you have privilege and you think, oh, low-income people and homeless people should have a resource center under a bridge. Like, I could totally see how they get upset and, like, do that. But it's just like, it's free real estate, and that's not even the joke or the meme. It's literally free real estate that opens up, that they could put that there. And again, you do have that vine line that goes along that state route, so they could just put a stop there. You have the pathways, not just from the bridge, but also from the Pearson Airport and thus Fort Vancouver, which is a park in itself technically, but also from the streets that go alongside of and up to Fort Vancouver, and the ones that go along the waterfront. Like, there's no reason, which is, by the way, vastly developing and densifying. There's absolutely zero logical reason why it would actually be, at that point, a bad thing to see the opportunity of building something underneath it, even if it was a building. But I personally wouldn't want a building there, because, again, that's why it would suck. And it would kind of be almost like a thumbing your nose up at those people. Like, well, this is what you deserve, because nobody else deserves that, because it's ugly and terrible. But you can't have it, because, well, what, beggars can't be choosers. It's like, well, technically, yes, but also fuck you. Like, that's kind of mean. Yeah, I see how both sides of that, but, like, I just wish people would see the opportunity in it as well, rather than just immediately being like, that's just terrible and everywhere. It's like, yes, it's ugly, it's terrible, but it opens up a lot of opportunity that, your big obsession with equity and something with the project, it actually adds legitimate real equity, not virtue signaling equity of just simply words and claims of like, oh, but black people need to be included in the planning of this bridge, because otherwise there's no equity in it. And it's like, that doesn't make any, it's traffic engineering. It doesn't make any sense. It's just a fucking piece of infrastructure. Like, what? But I already went through my whole thing about that, why that makes no sense, but different story. Anyway. So yeah, I wasn't even planning on reading this. You can read it again, because I'll have it linked in the description. But the case in point is already just in, and the main thing about it is already in the title. It would loom over Vancouver, and that's why I laughed at it, because it's so true. It's like, well, you don't say. Yeah, no, it's shit. Clark County today. Now here's literally right at home, across the river. So this is an op-ed, obviously. Opinion. Is the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program destined to follow the CRC to the bottom of the Columbia River? I actually hope so. I'm not gonna lie. And I think it probably will eventually get there. 100%. I do not understand what you mean by this. I don't understand what that means. I'd have to get context by looking at that, but I'm not going to because we're already going for like 2.5 hours on this thing. Dear Lord above. I mean, you can tell I have a hell of a lot to say share about this. Jesus. Clark County. Today, editor Ken Vance, so that's who you are. There is fear that the current attempt to create the replacement project will send a similar fate to CRC. Well, besides the fact it is the CRC, which is rebranded, I'm not going to go through that again. Already repeated that many times. Because of how fucking infuriating that is. Oh, man. Executive Steering Group. Oh, that, I thought it was environmental. No, Executive Steering Group. Oh, God. Of course, this bureaucratic branding and terminology. That's what ESG is. And by the State Bridge Committee of the Legislators. Administrator Greg Johnson said his team needed more time to provide the much-anticipated solution to the IBP, the Interstate Bridge Project. Well, the solution was expected to be made public in March, but now Johnson says it won't come until July. Considering the fact that Johnson and his team are attempting to provide a proposed solution that will please lawmakers, citizens, interest groups, and stakeholders from both states. Stakeholders is a problem because it means private investment and they want to get paid. That's all they care about. That's why they're stakeholders. They're the same people as shareholders. Shares are stakes. Boom. There you go. As well as have a project that threads the needle of requirements for federal funding. At first glance, a delay of 3 months doesn't move the most needles of suspicion or concern. However, it does continue to reinforce a fear that I have held, essentially, since the IBR program was created. Not created. CRC was rebranded to in 2019. After 8 years of planning that spent an estimated $200 million of taxpayer dollars. I did the last part myself, but it's an important detail. We paid for that. The Columbia River crossing failed in July 2013 due to Republican opposition and the Washington State Senate. Not only that, most residents on both sides of the river didn't like it. There was a fuck ton of vocality on that. Way more than this one has currently, by the way. There was so many people. I everywhere I looked or listened, I heard somebody, at least one person, bitching about it and saying like how stupid this was, especially the tolls and the light rail. They hated the concept. It looked terrible. They were adding lanes, which they were annoyed by too. It's just like, what is this shit? It was especially the tolls though. I remember that was the biggest peeve that everybody had. It was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? We don't want this. Well, here we are. Let's see. The Senate vote was just the final nail in the coffin. There were obviously many other factors for the failure. Yep. I mentioned some of them already multiple times. Nevertheless, it meant that all the time all that time and public money, taxes, was spent on virtually nothing. Yep. 7 years later, the IBR program, the rebrand, in other words, the CRC, picked up the baton and I know it's baton, but shut up. Baton and attempted to restart the race. The goal is not only to seek a replacement project agreeable to all involved, but also prevent $140 million in funding allocated for the CRC from being recalled. The deadline, which had been extended, or has been extended, current tense, to 2025. Should be noted that Washington's portion of that was reportedly $46 million. Ironically, Washington lawmakers approved $35 million for the program, and because the IBR program is handcuffed to the CRC's environmental impact statement and the original purpose and needs statement, this has presented several challenges for the current effort. I'm not so sure we wouldn't have been better off just paying, oh no, that's Ken Vance, just paying back the $46 million, which is only a net savings of 11. That we could have started off with a fresh project, which would have been the best case scenarios if they just actually really didn't just rehash it and started off, you know, with a brand new project that was very different and took the reality that like nobody's gonna fucking like this, nobody's gonna accept it, so therefore, let's see. Earlier this month, Johnson gave me more than an hour of his time to have a discussion about his team's efforts. Well, that's good. I didn't think that would happen. That's great, but he's a PR guy. He's the main guy, clearly. That's why he's always in all the videos and spearheading each of the meetings and everything out in public, including for videos. He may have been a half a country away at the time, but Johnson was then, and is now, well aware of the CRC failure. Johnson is the point person assigned to the Herculean task I described above. I was having a seizure there for a minute. Give me a break. I mean, I was meant to say, pardon me, but I said give me a break. Okay. Speaking of seizures, the personable, seemingly capable, and confident Johnson would like to be able to report that he arrived in 2019 just in time to save the day and prevent a repeat of the failed conclusion in the CRC. I'd love to tell you it's because Greg Johnson's here in town, he joked, but I'm not going to do that. Johnson served deputy director of the Michigan Department of Transportation during some of the timeline of the CRC. When I was at Michigan DOT, I heard that this failed the first go around. It had some national reverberations. Why would they not want to replace, at that time, a 90-something-year-old bridge? Oh yeah, that's another thing that they actually, I believe they said, I guess it was the other video. Maybe it was this one though. One of the videos I watched from the IBR said it was built, the Interstate Bridge was built 106 years ago. 100, it's in the name. The bridge didn't exist until this fucking 50s and 60s, when it was officially proposed that I-5 had to cross, of course. In the, I believe it was the late 50s and early 60s, the damn thing was being constructed. The bridge didn't exist before that. Why do they keep pushing this narrative that it's 100 plus years old? It's not that old. It's basically as old as my mom is. It might be exactly as old, actually. It makes no sense. Even my mom, who is that old and has always been a native Oregonian, born and raised, and has lived pretty much all but, like, I think the first 2 years of her life, or maybe the first, like, few months of her life, in this Portland area, literally acknowledges to me that this bridge is not that old. It was literally built for the interstate, as in, it didn't exist until the interstate was to be extended across the river, or rather connected across the Columbia River, meaning it's about as old as she is. And she would know. So I don't understand why they keep lying. They keep lying and lying and lying, saying it's 106 years old now, when it is quite literally 60. It can't be anywhere beyond early 60s in age, because that's when it would have and was built for the interstate. This bridge did not exist before that point. And that stuff annoys me, because it's an unnecessary and random lie to lie about. Why lie about that? It doesn't add up, and it certainly doesn't make any sense, and it's very annoying. So yeah, it was peaked. I heard this thing isn't done yet. Put a seed in my brain that I need to know how this thing could get done. So when the opportunity came for me to come out here, I did. Johnson said that he has worked on controversial projects before, including a bridge between Detroit and Canada. The Windsor Bridge. That was not only two communities, it was two different nations. So these things are of interest to me, and I helped set the groundwork for that thing moving forward successfully. Don't mistake Johnson for being overconfident or lacking perspective of the task he has at hand. This is a bit. So this just sounds almost like a promotional piece for Greg Johnson right now. Communication, as dozens of community outreach sessions have been held. Johnson said the fact that his team is seeking and receiving that input and feedback is what makes him confident this latest attempt will replace the bridge won't end in failure. I think it's still going to end in failure, because you're still trying to force it forward with the two things that were the main catalyst to why everybody hated and was against the CRC happening, and thus the main two reasons why it died in regards to the actual populations of both, you know, Oregon and here in this area specifically that it affects directly, and then obviously Clark County, Washington, and the Vancouver area. Like, it's in your face. You know why it really happened, and now you're just rebranding and doing it all over again, And yet you're acting like, oh, we learned from that and therefore we're doing it totally differently now because we're so focused on outreach and spending money on this. We really care. If you did, you would have already changed the damn plans. But you're still forcing it. Even when everybody up in Clark County and every one of the CC writers, or I did it again, not CC writers, sorry, C-Trans voters and people in their district that was even reliant on C-Tran, including to get into and from Portland, people who commute to and from Portland, so on, had wanted nothing to do with the light rail. And they even made it legal to where they're legally bound to where they will not ever have anything to do with it legally. Not a penny towards it. Because that's how much they're against it. The city of Vancouver emphasized that. That's why you're doing it where you're doing, putting that fucking station as its terminus in between I-5 on and off ramps in a freaking overpass. Because they don't want it. You know this. So if you actually gave a fuck and you were really trying to do differently and learn from the mistakes of the CRC and not just literally doing it with a rebrand, the same shit, except now adding even more lanes, if you actually listened to public input and you cared, you wouldn't be fucking doing this shit. So, Greg, you're a fucking liar, like every other politician is. So I can guarantee to this guy who's writing this, the editor Ken, and Greg himself and the entire IBR team, you're going to fail. This is not going to work. It's never going to work. Nobody's going to fucking like it enough. You're just going to sit here and all you're going to hear is dominantly people being against it. And just like the CRC, you're not being honest with people. You're not being wholly transparent about your plans or everything that it entails, this new IBR bridge. If you get your plan passed and done and you make it, you're not being honest. You're lying through your goddamned teeth, man, because you're not sharing with people that you're trying to make the interstate both directions at least 7 lanes wide. I didn't even know that until I read somebody's critique who actually had the diagrams, had the real engineering plans for the bridge and everything else. So Greg, you're lying. You don't care. And nor does anybody at IBR give a fuck, just like the CRC didn't. They don't give a fuck about anybody's input. No matter how much money of hours that you're spending, how many millions on outreach and communications and PR and everything else, meetings. You don't give a fuck. Because it would be your actions that would prove it, not you saying you do. That's a fact, and that's just true for anybody and everybody in all walks of life, at any point in life. It's a fact of life. You're lying through your teeth. You're not a trustworthy person, nor is the IBR group. Nobody's fucking trustworthy on this shit. If this shit was true, and you were really listening, and you were really all about outreach and listening, so you didn't repeat these failures of the CRC, you would have already had changed this months ago, and I wouldn't even probably be I wouldn't even still be going right now. I wouldn't even have as many negative comments as I do about it. Like, because you actually would have listened, and you would have adapted and changed it, but no, you refuse, because you're a liar, and you don't give a fuck, because you're a typical politician. All you give a fuck about is just repeating the same, well, as you're calling it, mistakes over again. It's absolutely unacceptable. We were talking to folks. We're getting a lot of input. And I think folks are getting their hands wrapped around this. That is important. That is a big deal. And the economic ramification of this failing is just too large. Bullshit. The economic ramifications of actually allowing this to happen as it is the problem. That has a lot more, especially long term, it's going to be worse. Gee. When I'm assuming Greg Johnson of the IBR and Kate Brown signed a memorandum of intent to create the latest replacement effort, Jay Inslee said the bridge could fall down any day with a small seismic event. Well, it's true, yeah. We do not have a choice. We have to replace this bridge. In our recent discussion, Johnson told me that he's not trying to run a fear campaign. However, he essentially does agree with Inslee. The consequences are just too big for us to miss another cycle of this not happening. Honestly, and I'm not lying about this when I say this, I think it's best if it does collapse. If nothing happens and eventually something causes or just age in general, wear and tear, the bridge just collapses into the river. I legitimately think that's actually a superior option at this point than the current plan and the original CRC plan, which is basically the same thing, just they added a lot more lanes, a lot more interchanges, a lot more horrors. It literally is probably exactly what we need, because it would not only piss off and make the governments realize that they're not going to get away with this. And they're not going to get away with claiming they're listening and not listening because they're not changing a thing and just keep doing the same shit over and over, trying to force it through and demand it against our wills. It forces them to have to acknowledge it's never going to happen because of that, but because we won't let it, basically. We, the voters, won't allow it. Our taxpayers will not put our money towards it. But at the same time, it does force everybody to realize, like, we gotta fucking get on our shit and fix shit, and how important infrastructure is. Like, we need to invest infinitely more in infrastructure, repair, replacement, and maintenance. Because, you know, like one politician had said at one point when somebody asked, why does nobody give a fuck, and why don't you give a fuck or do anything about infrastructure and transportation? They said, well, it's because it's not sexy enough. As in, nobody will give a fuck, and nobody cares, and nobody wants to hear about it, think about it, or deal with it because it's not sexy. It's not something that is entertaining or captivating of attention or thus important to people. They just want to care about the things that they want to care about. And 99.9% of the time, it's 50-plus-year-olds who are super into transit planning, all the logistic stuff. It's not, at least in the United States, it's an older person thing. It is not a younger person thing. It is not a majority of the voters who will give a fuck about it. And even then, it's so fucking niche that most people just don't care. Plus, we're in such a convenience-based world and culture in this country, especially, that everyone's lazy. They don't want to think about these things. They don't want to do it. All they care about is being entertained. All they care about is what they deem important, which usually has some type of entertainment of some kind. Like, that's it. And they want things to be convenient. So that's also another contributor to what they care about and what they're going to pay attention to. Because they don't actually give a flying fuck about anything else in reality. Because it's not convenient. And it's not sexy, as that, I believe, was a senator said. And they're absolutely right, which is a big problem. And so if it collapsed, that would force all the voters and every everyday person to realize, you know, it might be boring, and it might be niche, and it might be really geeky, nerdy, and brainy. But, you know, we really need to fucking start focusing on funding that shit and talking about it and making it way better. Because this happened. And it's for just cause it happened, because we weren't going to put our money towards all this fucking sham and scam horse shit that they're trying to do with the CRC and now the IBR, which is just, you get the idea. Which is a good thing, and it forced the government and the puppets and the politicians to realize, yeah, we're never going to get away with this, not as long as they actually still have some say, and the majority are still very vehemently against this, and they're not willing to pay their money towards it. Not only does it force that, which is a great thing, but it also forces everybody to grapple with, now we don't have it. So now what the fuck do we do? Well, we got to rebuild it. We got to come up with an actual plan that actually works for everybody, all of us, that fits what we need and we want. And it also forces people to do research and gain an interest in focusing on this very niche, geeky, nerdy, brainy, you know, out there topic that is considered unsexy, and realize, well, it may be unsexy, it may be boring, but it's imperative that we focus heavily on that, including once things are back up and running again, you know, improvements, expansions, and more. You know, just put generally more focus and funds heavily into infrastructure. It's that important, you know, in transportation. So, yeah, man, I tell you. Unlike Johnson, I can live with doing nothing. If it prevents wasting the estimated $3.2 to $4.8 billion in taxpayers' money for a project that does nothing to improve traffic congestion, adds tolls for Washington commuters and other travelers, enforces soon-to-be wasted forms of public transportation on area residents. Yep, soon-to-be forces forces, soon to be wasted, forms of public transit on area residents. That's the light rail he's referring to. That is the light rail. Yeah, and then so you can see by the URL on the bottom of the page, CTRAN proposes permanent cuts in cross-river traffic, which is obviously that, if you read this, I bet it's going to specifically be reliant on the IBR going through and thus the light rail happening, which I guarantee, because they're a multi-governmental agency too, they may not be paying for it. However, that's hand in hand with TriMet right there. That's a deal they struck. Now, I will say that is going to be outdated, because that obviously happened before this, and this, I think, was earlier in the year. I mean, I know it's earlier in the year by a few months, but I'm not sure exactly when. No, I'm sorry. It was last year. It was almost exactly a year ago to date that this was published and made. Okay. Oh, that's Greg Johnson. Oh, you know, you're right. That is Greg. You're right. So Ken, you're absolutely right about this. 100% of all your concerns, everything you're saying, you're absolutely right. At least you're being honest, and you're being blunt about it, while still being, you know, easy and going, unlike me right now, and have been this entire time on it. I cannot appreciate it enough. Thank you for your work and voicing the stuff, and I'm going to be sure to make sure I share this with as many people as I can. No shares on Facebook, probably next to nothing on Twitter, and then here. So I'm assuming nobody really read this, which is a bad thing, especially being almost a year old. This needs to be shared around a lot more. You're absolutely right about this, in every possible way. Oh God, yeah. So that proves that it's even earlier. It's probably exactly a year ago, or more than a year ago now, that proposal from CTRAN was there. I'll look at it after this, because I might even leave a comment referring to it, just so you know. But I guarantee that was in reference to probably a deal they struck behind closed doors with TriMet over the light rail proposal, before CTRAN finally had to give in and cave in to their voters, their writers, and everybody else that were saying, fuck no, which they did about a month and a half, 2 months ago, I believe. In that meeting is when they officially legally wiped their hands of any penny payment towards it. And same with the actual entire county of Clark County and Washington, the state, and the city of Vancouver when it comes down to the light rail extension for Max. So, yeah, I guarantee that was that cut proposal was reliant on that. I will probably let you know if I remember to look at that later. Okay, you know what? Fuck it. I'll open it right now just to be able to look at it later, so I don't forget. But yeah, that's obviously no longer the case now. I'm sure that proposal died quick because nobody wants to use the light rail. None of their users want to use light rail, but they want to use their bus. So that doesn't surprise me. Public stakeholders, interest groups, and elected officials in both states. I asked Johnson for examples of how all that input and feedback has impacted his team's vision for the eventual solution. Actions, the plan itself hasn't changed. So whatever he says here is a lie if he says it's changed anything. So let's take a look. So one of the things that we heard on both sides of the river was the importance of climate and the future of how this bridge may impact climate change. And so we brought on a principal climate officer that reports daily to me. Her duty is to see what Washington State has as far as law, what the regional partners have on their books for the climate goals, and the same on the Oregon side. As we move forward is one of our key things that we've heard that we've incorporated into this project. So that's meaningless. That's just another figurehead to add to there just to make it look better. The same with equity. Again, that's an advertising and branding term. Same with adding this climate woman. That's all it is. Climate officer, whatever. We've looked at and heard of both sides that there's a history of some inequitable outcomes of apparently building a bridge that almost nobody lives under. Right. So first, we have to know about them. And then we have to talk about how we can either mitigate or how we can change those impacts going forward. So those are things that have impacted how this program moves forward. That's it. That's all he said. So yeah, he didn't lie. He didn't say anything has changed with the plans of the program at all. He simply used these two things because he knows, especially in the Portland area, which is the majority of voters, so it's the majority of tax money, so it's the majority of people who matter to get on the side of the plans. He's saying that to suck up to them. That's really what he's doing. It's a marketing, advertising, branding, PR scheme. That's all this is. That's why he focused on those things, and he also didn't lie because he avoided saying anything about how it changes the plans. He just said, "Oh, we've hired 2 people and we've listened closely, and these are the things. So we realized we need to talk about things so we can figure out how to mitigate or change outcomes." Oh, fuck you, dude. It's the total typecasted classical blueprint script PR that every government official and every mega project officials use. They use this because you can literally look at every single other one. They will say exactly the same shit. It's canned responses. That's all it is. It's, in other words, nothing. Nothing's changed. They haven't listened to anybody. They don't care. They're just worried about advertising, catering, so that way everything, seems great. It's so stupid. As Edward Johnson, in the time of the CRC and IBR program, my estimate is that I've written more word stories about transportation issues, traffic congestion, and the I-5 bridge replacement than any other topic. And during that time, I have obviously had many, many conversations with citizens, stakeholders, and officials. I told him that never once has the topic of climate change and equity come up in those conversations. Boom! Boom! Exactly. It's fucking advertising, canned response horse shit. I told you, that's why on the IBR's page, that's why, front and center, their number one thing, they have in big, bold, beautiful text with, all these people of different ages and colors in the photograph, talking about equity. It's advertising. It's PR. It's marketing. That's it. Because, like the rant, I'll just have you skip back to when I ranted about that. About how stupidly horseshit all of this is about equity when it comes down to building this bridge. Because the main thing, like I said, is nobody fucking lives underneath that bridge. Almost anybody. There's a few things around and where would be underneath that bridge of buildings on Hayden Island. But beyond that, nobody's going to be there. In Vancouver, I don't think anybody's going to be under the bridge either, or have to destroy anything. They might have to destroy a few buildings, but it's downtown. In any city, downtowns are by far the most expensive in luxury, and especially when you're gentrifying as much as Vancouver, Washington is right now, especially in their downtown region. You can bet your ass and your butt there's not going to be almost any low-income people there, if any at all, let alone on affordable income. And there's certainly going to be probably very few, admittedly, minorities there. Because it is true. They tend, whether it's because of their own doing or not, and a heavy amount, whatever you believe about that, they are very likely to not have enough money, income, and status to be able to even begin to consider to move somewhere that close to a gentrifying downtown. So it's not going to displace the people that matter in the sense of who you're concerned about as a social rights or justice group or equity group or whatever else. It's just not. If we're being completely honest, this has nothing to do with that. And again, this is infrastructure, so this has to do with a bridge and adding a fuck ton of traffic lanes like that aren't there currently, which is a horrific idea. But I'll refer you back to that part where I ranted, because I'm not going to do it again because I've already been through that. So, and I need water really bad because I've been out now for a while, and I've talked to myself for almost 3 hours straight now. So But no, he's absolutely correct. It never once came up in these conversations. And I can guarantee to you, if I went out there and I talked to as many people as I could in Vancouver and in Portland area, I guarantee that you're going to find maybe, if I talk to 100 people, I guarantee that maybe 1 or 2 at max would mention one of those 2 things. And that's it. Because the main thing they're worried about really is how much it's going to cost and how much they're going to pay for it. And then the plan itself, and like, well, what is it? What are they planning? What is in the plans that they're trying to do with it? Well, how about 7 lanes in each direction? They don't publicly advertise that, and they won't publicly tell you that because they know that's not going to fucking sell. Certainly not in the Portland, Vancouver metro area and then the West Coast. We, if anything, want to remove lanes or remove the freeways entirely through our main areas, especially when it impacts, oh, I don't know, our natural environments and waterways. Who would have fucking thought? So, the fact of the matter is, no one is gonna fucking mention this shit. Almost not a soul. If you talk to 100 people, especially if you're in Portland, and especially anywhere near PSU or the, you know, the hipster gentrified areas, you're probably gonna get at least 1 or 2 people eventually in your 100 people you ask that will mention maybe equity or maybe environment. It's most likely going to be climate, so environment. It's almost guaranteed not to be anything else, not to be the equity thing, because it doesn't work. You're not going through, you know, it's not 1950, 1960, or 70 something. You're not going through Albina. You're not going through some historical, you know, black neighborhood in downtown. You're not going through anything. You're using most of your existing alignment, in fact. So there's no equity in that. But so I'm glad that he did his due diligence to go talk with as many people as he could in the community and find out that nobody mentioned it. Their main things are traffic congestion, tolls, and public transit. Exactly. Traffic congestion is always a major thing, and especially when it comes down to interstates. Think about the bridge. If you know anything about I-5 bridge, congestion is a nightmare, especially when it comes down to like the hour or so before rush hour, as everybody starts to begin to trickle out from school and from college and from work and to go to work and to college or to school or to whatever the fuck they're going. It's a parking lot. It took from, and I kid you not, from 26, just before the fucking tunnel, just to get across the river, the Columbia River, on I-5, from 26. We ended up going up 405 and then I-5. It took us, and I shit you not, it took us this summer 20, I don't know why I'm saying 20, it took us, I think, 2 hours at least. I think it was 2.5 hours though it took us just in that tiny little segment to go a total of what is 56 miles to the amphitheater in Ridgefield from where I live here in Oregon on the west side of Portland. 56 road miles. And for that tiny little segment, which is actually less than half of the distance, it took us over 2 hours just to get across the fucking river. That's inexcusable. So yeah, congestion is probably going to be the literal #1 concern and thing that everybody's going to be focused on with a new I-5 bridge, because there's nothing more than everybody, including diehard anti-car people, are going to want to figure out than to fucking solve or at least heavily lessen the traffic congestion that the bridge has. Now, a part of the reason why it has the congestion that it does, admittedly, is because it's one of only two bridges you can use to get across the river to and from Vancouver. 2. And that is it. Otherwise, you have to go all the way west to frickin' Rainier to cross over the Longview Bridge. And then go all the way back around again. And back down into the Vancouver area. From the Kelso Longview region. Halfway to fucking Astoria on 30. Just to fucking have an alternative option to I-5 or I-205. Which I-205 is extremely congested for the same reason. So that's a major reason why congestion is this much of a hot topic in the first place, and that the number one focus of everybody that is concerned and focused on figuring out what the fuck to do and how the fuck they're going to do the replacement of the I-5 bridge. That's why we are fucked in the Vancouver area and the Portland area if we even want to think about going across the river. We should not have to fucking literally plan to leave at 2 p.m. at the latest just to get across the river to arrive for something that starts at 7 o'clock in the evening. That should be like a 40-minute trip, max. We shouldn't have to literally leave at 2 p.m. to attend something at 7 p.m. That is so fucking, like, fucked up. So, it's a logistical nightmare only having two things. And yeah, congestion is going to be the number one issue. Not equity, not even climate. It's going to be the congestion problem. And then yeah, public transit is another major one. And I guarantee that the transport reason is because nobody fucking wants the light rail. Like I've said so many times in this before. That's one of the reasons why the CRC died. Is because of the fact they would not fucking let go of extending the max across the fucking river. Nobody in Oregon and nobody in Washington, especially nobody in Washington, wanted a damn thing to do with light rail. They would not do anything but force it. And so it died. Case in point of it being a perfect rebrand, it's exactly identical, just added more lanes and a different logo, name, and branding, and different faces to present it to you people. That's it. It's the classic bullshit that we always get. It's a fact. But that's why the public transportation is a big focus, because we don't want also alternative options. But nobody wants the light rail. Meaning, what do people want? They want proper, like really high capacity bicycling and walkways. Literally pedestrian and bicyclist ways all the way across the river. They absolutely want that. Everybody wants that. But they want it infinitely larger than they have it here. Because they know how high of demand it's going to be, how many people are going to want to use it. And yeah, they're probably also, you know, gonna want to freaking be safe and have buffers be spaced between, you know, the pedestrians if you're a bicyclist, or vice versa if you're a pedestrian, and each other, as well as they're probably gonna want, you know, an area where they can lean against the you know, the fence of the bridge and just enjoy a view, like while they're taking a little bit of a break, maybe, and a breather before they go the rest of the way across the bridge. It's that simple. But in terms of actual mass transportation, public, what's the only other real alternative? Obviously, it's going to be bus. You literally don't have another thing associated with the bridge to get across. If it's not rail, and the only one that's going to be light rail, then it's going to be bus. So people want alternative modes and options. They want bus improvements and bus lanes probably, or even an exclusive, literally protected bus way built onto or into the lanes, if not maybe even, you know, built alongside, kind of like they're doing with the pedestrian, the shared pathway, I think is what they call it, which is the bicycle and pedestrian one. That's obviously indicates to you exactly what you need to do and what we all want. Nobody wants the transit, so that's why the transit's a big thing. And then the tolls is the other reason why the CRC died, because they would not let go of the tolls. They were forcing the tolls, just like the light rail. They were so fucking determined and adamant to force it on us that we made sure that fucking thing died. Now here, it's resurrected as a completely different name, face, title, but it's exactly the same thing. Just now adding more lanes, but they won't tell you that. Even though it's a very clear, provable fact. They are not going to publicly share that themselves, and they will not talk about it because they know how it will never sell successfully to anybody. In fact, it's going to pit endlessly more potential buyers from us voters on it because nobody wants it. I already talked about that now multiple times. So that's why these three are the number one three things, the main three things that everyone, no matter if you're in Clark County or in Multnomah or in Washington or in Clackamas or even in Columbia County or Clatsop County or fucking Hood River County or Sherman County, like you're gonna, Marion County, you're gonna need to use that bridge at some point. So everybody's really upset, focused on it, and they want to make sure it makes fucking sense and it fits our needs and our desires, and that they actually fucking listen to us. That's why we killed the CRC. If we're gonna be fucking paying for it from our hard-earned taxes and the billions of billions, tens of billions of dollars, then you bet your ass we're gonna make sure we dictate the terms and conditions. I think anybody's, especially with here in Oregon, we rejected the transportation bond measure because that's just a max funding package that TriMet rebrands as a transportation bond measure. We rejected the last one in November of 2019 because of the fact that people were smart enough to recognize, fuck no, because nobody wants to pay those billions of dollars for another fucking light rail line. We're sick and tired of new max lines. We're sick and tired of TriMet's bullshit and their lies and their light rail and their rebranding schemes. This is just the same thing, but instead with the Interstate Bridge Replacement plans. That's it. Plain and simple. And, so yeah, these are going to be the main focal points. Always. 100% for sure. It's just so stupid. And then one more thing that people are saying is add one more to that list is the fact that many of us prefer the creation of a third crossing. Exactly. Kind of like what I just expressed would make impeccably perfect sense. Yeah. And in fact, actually, that third option, if it's high capacity, guess what? You could toll I-205 or I-5. It'd obviously be I-5 you'd want to toll because that would force balancing of the people using the three different bridges to get to and fro. So you already have people that like, okay, well, I-5 as always is fucked. So I'm going to take my bets and think I'm going to get across the bridge and into the place I'm trying to get to at the same time, or likely shave at least a few minutes of time off my trip if I go that much further to get on I-205's bridge instead and route myself back around. And oftentimes that is true. That's why people do it. You'll actually hear, if you talk with people often enough that consistently go across the bridges, they're like, legitimately, you can figure out exactly what times and what days that it's actually more beneficial to make the extra, like, upwards of 40 miles, or not 40 miles, sorry, but like extra, like, I think it's like 14 to 18 mile trip between I-5 and I-205's bridge to get to the fucking bridge. And so like an extra 40 minutes supposedly is supposed to take, because again, you're adding more length to your trip just there, and then you're needing more, once you get across the bridge. So you would think it would take a lot more. But in reality, it actually oftentimes shaves upwards of sometimes 30 minutes at, usually at best, off of your trip if you take all that extra distance. So people do that all the time, which means they're both aggressively congested, because that's just kind of how it works. You're going to make a determination as a motorist which one's going to get you somewhere more efficiently and quicker, naturally. Or if you're just going to figure, well, fuck it, it's probably comparable, I'm just going to stay stuck here and say, why the fuck did I go out at this point in time on this day or in the summer or whatever it is, which is totally, again, understandable. It makes impeccable sense. So a third option would be great, especially with high capacity or higher capacity, but not obviously as high capacity as the interstates, obviously. Because then if you toll say, I-5, you still have the other two options if you don't want to be tolled. But likely it is, more people are going to still opt for 205 if they are going to avoid tolls than they are that other one, because it's a lot lower capacity and obviously going to be probably slower. So of course, guess what? Boom. It balances out the amount of people that are going to be using each route. It's a fantastic idea, I think, in that sense, because you're going to want to toll one of them, and it's obviously going to be I-5 if you add a third one, because otherwise you're just inducing demand and all this other problems too. But yeah, of course, again, that's the fourth thing. The fourth most common thing is, why not just give us another bridge? Like, yes, we need to replace it, so let's replace the fucking bridge. But instead of adding more lanes and all this other stupid shit, why not just fucking add a third bridge? A third option to get across the river? It would make sense. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So yeah. My God. There are more aspects of this effort that Johnson was gracious enough to provide me thoughtful and insightful answers to. When possible, Clark County Today will share some other those details with our readers. I want to make it clear, as I have before, I am not against the project to replace the I-5 bridge. Yeah, it needs to be done right. Exactly. That it should only come after a third crossing or corridor is built. Yeah, you can actually do a tunnel as a third one. If you're insisting this has to be a bridge for the interstate, okay. Why not build the tunnel as a third option? Great. Now you get another option, and it's literally another option in terms of like something different where it's a tunnel instead. I think it makes sense. Yeah, of course. It's not part of his job, but yeah. I think it's damn near impossible too. I don't think people are gonna... I think most people's general consensus is that they're just sick and tired of it because it's the same fucking thing as the CRC. It's like, this is CRC all over again. In fact, actually, another thing about it, I literally said that the first time I saw the IBR was a thing. Which, by the way, it was this year. I didn't even know it existed until now. Until now, bad term. But until a few months back. Then I realized, oh my, I think it was like June, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a thing? And then I was looking at it, including some of the plans, what they're talking about in their advertising. I'm like, this shit is CRC all over again. It's the fucking Columbia River crossing all over again. It's because it's literally the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. So, sorry for how long-winded this is, but most 99% of people that will view this are going to view it anyway as a VOD. So, skipping through or watching different portions when you have time and then getting back to it is a great option that anybody and everybody has. And anybody with something this long, especially streams, usually does. So, obviously I recommend you did that. If you just sat through this whole thing, I don't know what to tell you. Hopefully you didn't do what I did and not get yourself more water when you needed it and dehydrate the hell out of yourself. But yeah, like it's just ridiculous. I 100% agree with everything here that Ken said. Ken Vance. You're absolutely right, Ken. 100% of everything you said, and this needs to be shared as many places as possible. With as many people as possible, because you're absolutely right. This is a year old now, just about, almost exactly. But you're still spot on. It's even, in fact, I guarantee to you now, this is even more spot on than it was then on November the 27th of last year. It's the 2nd of November of this year, and I guarantee it's even more emphatically correct. So, very well done, man, on being on top of your shit, and understanding the reality of it and pointing out all these concerns and things, because they're absolutely correct. And then also being willing to tell him to his face, like, hey, well, when I was asking as many people in my community as possible about this, the only things that they were really concerned about, and they never once mentioned your equity and your climate stuff, was traffic congestion tolls and public transit, along with adding a third crossing. Most people, especially in media, whether small or not, most people do not have the guts to do that. I'm very proud you told that to his face. I'm very proud of you for that. Thank you for being one of the few people that actually are willing to be that honest and do that. And also do that kind of extra work and due diligence and ask people, because that's such an important thing, and I really appreciate that, man. Thank you. Let's see. Interstate Bridge Replacement Program is the second attempt to get an I-5 bridge replacement project approved. Will it culminate in the ultimate approval by Washington and Oregon lawmakers, or will it fail as the Colorado Crossing did? I don't believe in politics in the sense of, like, I know that all politicians are puppets. That's my perception. And so they're just going to do whatever their people who bought them into office tell them to do. So in our case, kind of like how TriMet operates, it doesn't matter how many of us are against it or what we say. They're eventually going to force it down our throat. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do that. So if you worded this as, oh, do you think it will simply get approved? I would treat that as, by us, the people, I would say no, it's going to fail. And so I'm going to use it, I'm going to say that that's how it was worded. I'm going to ignore how it's worded by the lawmakers, and I'm going to say we, the people, the voters of the entire Portland, Vancouver region, the mass majority of us are going to say, fuck this, I refuse to accept this. It's going to fail. Lawmakers, on the other hand, will probably do the opposite. But yeah, see, I told you, the mass majority are going to say it's going to fucking fail. This is a fantastic read. This is a fantastic article. Everything about this is absolutely phenomenal. Thank you, Ken, for taking the time to make this and be honest with everybody about it. Appreciate it. I'm going to send as many people as I can your way as often as I can remember to do it. So I appreciate it. Thank you. So this was September 23rd of last year. So again, it's the no to tolls, which again makes perfect sense. So I'm not going to read this. It's super short anyway, but yeah, no to tolls. Like, again, that's like the number one thing alongside the light rail that murdered the frickin' CRC and, again, we the people's eyes. We just said, fuck no to that. You know? And rightfully so. So, since this is just a case of, oh, hey, look, we changed clothes, you know, and face and everything. We have a different masquerade now. So we're totally different and unique. The fact is, that's a lie, and it's 100% the same thing. But that said, I've ranted enough and rambled enough and gone on enough and read enough and dehydrated myself enough and gone on for over 3 hours about this. I didn't think I would go for 3 hours. I thought maybe 2, knowing me, but not 3. What a perfect way to go out and finish the stream is have another frickin' sex bot come in and spam the frickin' bullshit. Thank you for watching, and heck, as usual, if you guys enjoyed and or got any kind of value out of this, whether you agree or disagree, I would encourage you highly to share this around, and also some of these links that I have in the description below of each of the things I showed within this whole live breakdown of 3+ hours. And I apologize for how ridiculously long this is. I did not anticipate that, but you know, I'm impassioned about it, so I guess it was kind of inevitable. So yeah, thank you for watching, and yeah, if you got any kind of value with it, I cannot recommend sharing it enough, especially considering, again, this is a very community driven thing. We need to get the word out as much as possible, including about the realities of this. So those articles and this and anything else that's related, I would highly recommend sharing, because yeah, obviously, and if you got value, inevitably other people are going to too, so there's no reason not to. And with that said, I'll see you later. Stay safe out there, and maybe I'll see you in whatever the next video or live stream might be. Until next time, again, my name is Danny from the west side of the Portland area, speaking from personal experience and lifelong interest in mass transit and all that good stuff. So, see you later. Good day. Goodbye. Good night. Good. Sayonara.